Right, I'm here for another episode of Thorinquiry, my interview series here on my side channel, and my guest for this one is going to be Rubi, aka Dejaru22 from Twitter, if you follow this sort of circle of people I'm interested in on social media. Right, this is going to be a bit of a strange one, Rubi, because normally I do actually have a lot of like niche people who I managed to get on the show. Spoiler one, because that's why I can get them on the show. Like, there's certain very famous people I would have, but I can't even contact them. There's no way in, and they wouldn't say yes. So there's a reason why, you know, naturally, the way I'm sort of famous only in my niche, but not outside of it. I do, in most of these interviews, have to sort of set up in the preamble, like who the person is, like, oh, this person's a battle rap person, but, you know, they're a really legendary figure, whatever. On your case, it's actually more the topic as to why I wanted to do this show, which is, I would essentially say, that we'll start here, actually. To me, I'm not actually even sure how you define yourself. To me, you're just an interesting Twitter persona. And when I'm on my social feeds, you have your own perspective, you have very defined brand angles. But I actually wondered, how would you define yourself in that sense? Like, do you consider yourself, like, I mean, there's a million terms now, influencer? Are you just trying to put your thoughts out in the world? What's the angle for you? What's the appeal of social media? What are you trying to do?
Wow. That is such an amazing question. Okay, so firstly, I want to say that this is my podcast debut. I normally turn them all down, but, you know, I could not turn this one down with Thorin because I know how excellent of a host he is. So, Thorin, thank you for that lovely introduction. How would I describe myself? Man, if I were to, that's such a tough question. I can't really pin myself down into one thing. I guess I would just say I'm a guy who has a particular outlook on life and wants to spread those messages as far as he can, because I really just enjoy helping change the way that people look at themselves and reality through, you know, mindset, through the language we use, all sorts of things, through spirituality.
Sure.
And that's my passion. I really like to, you know, make people's eyes glow bright.
Okay. Because one thing actually I wanted to initially start out with, I thought it was a good place to start, because basically I have a lot of thoughts about social media and these things, because it's been a big part of my life and my career the last, say, like 10 years or so. But I noticed the problem is, like, social media itself is not a very good place to have those discussions. It's obviously inherently sort of recursive. And also, there's not many people. I mean, I know that plebs are going to get mad at this already, but don't worry, mate. That's essentially our whole style. Basically, I'm sorry, but if you're just a guy that has 50 Twitter followers and you yourself mainly just use it as a consumer and all you do is follow your favorite feeds and reply to them and don't get much interaction, you can't really relate to what I'm about to talk about if you're a random guy out there. So it's actually just also rare that there are people who have been in similar positions or had similar kinds of spotlight on them or scrutiny, or people get mad at you, or people fanboy over you. You know, it's like, I thought it'd be interesting to get someone who's from that world. So one thing I want to ask was, it's a bit like the opening question, is a lot of people want to pretend, it's probably the number one thing with social media, I'd say, that they're totally authentic. And this is just who they are. I mean, it's a big part of why I think virtue signaling is such a big deal. You know, you're sort of telling everyone, like, oh, don't worry, I'm one of the good ones. You know, I'm great. You know, like, let's just sense you what you're doing. But to me, everyone, when they come online, I think of it a little bit. Here's my analogy. I think of it as more like the Matrix. It's like you're going into the Matrix. That's what going online is. And so, yeah, there's going to be elements to who you are, but it's a bit like the Matrix. You can select a persona. You can have a code name. You can be this slice of who you are. And you can embellish elements of it in the same way as you're in the Matrix. It was like how they idealized, how they saw themselves is how they would appear instead of how maybe they were in real life or whatever, you know. And obviously, you could play up different angles. So how would you describe, do you think of your online, is it a persona to you? Is it like a slightly skewed version of who you are? How close is it to, if someone was to meet you, obviously this is very different outside of the settings of the internet, how different would you say it is? Like, are you channeling certain elements? Are there certain elements you don't want to put online? What would you say in that sense?
I would say that if I'm careful what I do put online, it's actually as much of me as possible. Like, I don't have a mask or a voice that I go to talk in that's, you know, specific. I won't keep it professional, so you only see things from me that are very relevant to my niches, for example. I will literally use it as and just an open stream of consciousness.
Sure.
So I don't think that can be too much inauthenticity from that, just from the stream. So recently, like today, I tweeted out, I just saw a building in my city, and I saw a huge, enormous crane 20 floors up. How do they do that, right? It's a completely useless tweet. It's not adding value to anybody.
So it's like a shower thought sort of thing, right?
Yeah, it's a shower thought, and that's my entire 24/7. It's just shower thoughts.
Sure.
So to that degree, I really, it's exactly what I'm thinking at the time. There's not much consistency within it. It's just literally me just splat onto the internet, written in a way that's persuasive.
Right. That's interesting because it's funny. In one sense, I do have a persona online. I mean, first of all, I literally am a character within a different industry, and in that field, it's certainly more, you can't be quite as free with what you want to say as just an individual who doesn't have any, ties or political reasons he can't say something. There's that element, but I would say something similar for myself, mate, which is, one of the reasons I've always looked down, even before people had the term cancel culture, on people who try to mob people for their opinions online, is because it's like, bro, is this that big a deal to you? Like, just having an idea and put it on the line. Like, why is it people act like when you do a tweet, you've just published a manifesto? You know what I mean? Like, it's like what you're saying, mate. To me, Twitter, especially because I actually have other creative outlets, to me, Twitter's like my notepad. It's like, these are just scribbles, mate. Like, yeah, every now and then one of them might be a banger, one of them might be crap. Like you say, I might have some similar, like I'll do a tweet every now and then about just whatever I'm thinking about, like some sports game I watched, where it's like, some people who follow me might not even know what the fuck I'm talking about, but yeah, I'll just put it out there. So to me, the other thing I'd also say as well, mate, is I find it so easy. Like when I see all these people studying those guides, like how to make your tweets more viral, and then you got to crack, it's like, bro, I don't even do that. I just sit down and fucking tweet them. Like in my actual field, I even realized a few years ago, I wasn't even doing it right. Like everyone in my field in esports abuses all the hashtags, because you need to be in the hashtag if someone searches it, or you need to reply to the bigger account than you so that you're the top comment. I wasn't doing any of that shit, mate. It's why when people act like, you must be trying so hard, it's like, brother, I'm just fucking roll out of bed and hit send. Exactly, you know what I mean? What do you think?
Yeah. Well, it's exactly, that's exactly right. And when you use it kind of more like just like your notepad, right? It's a whole lot more authentic. People actually see the broader spectrum of your whole personality. This one, thing like, oh, this person actually is a real human being. They don't feel like some company that's being talked to them, So, Thorin, you and I are exceptional in that we have not only, for our sizes, we have very, very deep connections with our following, right?
Sure.
Like there's a stronger, they actually feel like, that you'd be just some mate that you'd call up on the phone, right?
Yes.
It feels intimate. It feels personal. And that can only happen when there's an actual personality. So by you taking a whole broad spectrum and plastering it out, right? People can actually see who you are. So, I completely agree with you that it's cringe in all those guides to try and get it down to a science. Like, bro, have you tried just being cool?
Yeah. Like the real joke is just become interesting, mate, and naturally people will be attracted to you magnetically. You don't have to trick them, It's a bit like the famous thing that people come to the conclusion of. It's actually why I think they scare people away from pickup artist stuff. If you ever go into that field, you find a couple of techniques that work, but the actual conclusion at the end, even though it sounds like it's a rubbish movie conclusion, is like if you just become a really interesting, cool person, everyone will be attracted to you, men and women. So, you sort of crack it there, whereas instead you think the same thing when you go in, like, I'm trying to figure out, what's the secret that I can copy and trick them. It's like, you're not tricking anyone, bro. Like the secret is not to trick them. Like you say, when you do it right, people are just attracted.
That's literally it. You're just being an authentic human being and people can actually feel it, right? We all have known what somebody who's authentic feels like. So when we see it online, even though you don't know the person, you can still feel that genuine, this is a real human being.
Yes. It's actually why, even without naming names, there's certain people in, for example, the political sphere, or sometimes, the obvious one would be things like money Twitter. There's certain things I don't even really care about, like investing and stuff like that. It's not really my bag at the moment. But if people just have a really interesting brand like that, and they have a certain voice, and it looks like they give their own takes, that alone, that's more interesting than whatever shit they're posting that the other people think's valuable. One thing I wanted to ask you about, by the way, was another thing I've always found really, in a way, fascinating, but also disappointing about the online experiences. It is in some level like you're on a fucking safari and you're learning about what humans are like as animals in a way, because even though in theory they should all be responding to what you've said, dude, 99% of what people tweet at you is just their internal landscape revealed. I'll give you an example. If you ever read online comments about like my shows and interviews and things I do in esports, dude, you would think they're the most hateful, like full of vitriol and rhetoric. And then if you ever watch them, mate, it's like my tweets. I've got a smile on my face half the time I tweet them. It's just shit posted. Like I say, some of them are just jokes, it's thoughts. Like my actual vibe's totally different from like the sort of response I'm getting from the person who hates it. Like that person, like I have to say, like I think you're bringing most of that to the table, mate. It's not from my side. We're having a great time. But if you pause any random moment in a talk show I'm doing, people are laughing, they're having fun, we're making light of things, we're having serious convos, but we're keeping it like respectful. Then you read the online rhetoric, and again, like you say, you'd think it was like the most evil screed ever put on the internet. What do you think about that? Because I see you get this kind of response too sometimes when it's obvious you're just having fun, right?
Oh, mate, look, misery loves company. That is the truest thing on earth. And so miserable people are always going to exist, and they're going to look to project whatever they're thinking onto the, whatever you've just posted. So they're going to find the most, twisted way to possibly interpret it.
Yes.
And then to splat their opinion of like, well, no, as if you've just murdered their entire family. Like it's just genuinely, it's vitriolic. It's not an accurate perception of what's actually being said. They're looking for a way to externalize some kind of hate, some kind of frustration or grief. And, they just found you as the outlet.
Yes. Oh, it's like another thing as well is when people will, when they'll post these replies to you, like I'll give you the obvious famous example everyone knows. Like nowadays, it's almost like a common parlance to say you got Kathy Newman because of that famous John Peterson interview everyone remembers years ago, which I will just throw out there, the breadcrumb that everyone always misses, which is, so you're telling me the news network itself put the entire unedited interview on the internet for you to watch forever, and you act like, oh my God, wow, they didn't know what they were doing. Like, you guys are fucking peons if you actually think that, by the way. Like, they wanted you literally to watch that and take the conclusion you all got, which is, wow, she seems a bit dominating. This guy is good at talking. Like, that's called fucking WWE, guys. That's when you put the wrestler over at like WrestleMania with the popular guy. Like, they wanted you to like that guy. But anyway, we'll get into that tangent. The point I was going to make was, when everyone watches that, they all see that, and it's an extreme example, so they all go like, oh, what an idiot this person is. Like, bro, and that's how the majority of people online talk. Like you say, you can say anything. People have done this before. You can actually just say something as simple as I like X, and then they're like, wow, so you hate Y, Z, and you fucking want him to die or something. People will just take whatever angle they want on it. And I feel like there's something, here's the problem, mate. It can't just be that everyone's a nutter. I also feel like the medium's doing that to people, like the fact that they can't see you or they don't know you, or, I mean, the internet now, the algorithm almost like throws you together with people who hate your shit, which is a bit dark. Like I always say, in a weird way, the modern day, it feels like when you tweet on social media, it's a bit like one of those matchmaking services in online games where they match you with all your teammates. But in this scenario, it's just 9 people who hate you in the game with you, and then it's like it's a steel cage death match of you versus here's the 9 people online who would most hate what you said. Like, enjoy the conversation, enjoy the discourse. What do you think on that angle then? Like, what do you think of the fact that it does feel like people, it's almost like they want to be upset with what you've said sometimes. I feel like people always come in primed to get mad at what you've said. And like you say, they'll twist it into whatever configuration they need to get almost like the justification to feel how they want to feel or something.
That's right. Look, a lot of people want validation, like a reason for feeling it the way they do. So if they just feel shitty in general, right, they're going to like, well, what am I actually mad at? This is subconscious. They don't even realize this. What am I actually mad at? I don't know. Let me just go on Twitter. Oh, this guy sucks, right? And then they'll go and then they'll work themselves up. They'll get themselves into a frenzy, and then they'll just spew all over the page. And they'll go, there, yeah, that's right. That guy. So then they can actually feel that emotion for a specific reason. So I don't know, man. It's just this weird pathology that afflicts many, many people.
Have you found that, do you also think there's a similar vibe? I'll spin it the other way. How about from your perspective? Do you think when you communicate with people online, I mean, there is no facial expression. In theory, there's like an avatar you can have as your image, obviously, that in some way maybe programs them. But in general, they're just reading the text of what you say. And the theory is the idea is just going into their brain, they react to it. Do you think there's something different in that sense about how you socialize, how you communicate with people, as opposed to if you were to meet them in person? Is there some significant difference to you?
Oh, absolutely. Most of our communication is nonverbal, right? So
sure,
when you're limited to Twitter, it's just verbal. So you can't hear anything like tone. You can't hear any sarcasm, really, unless they're a very good writer.
Yep.
And so there's a whole element. It's, it's a completely different communication versus if you're in person. You can see the person's facial expressions. You can see their body language. You can see how they gesture their hands, right? You can hear the tone, everything. So it completely distorts it. They're two different ball games.
How do you actually think of the people who follow you? I mean, earlier on you talked about how like you have a connection with them and stuff. Do you have a sense in your mind of there's a difference between people who like actually follow your stuff and are interested and just random people who encounter it because of the algorithm or it's in their feed or something?
Oh, mate, I can pick it out like.
Oh, you have like a radar for it if they message, right?
Completely. I can tell without even clicking on their profile if it's going to say, when I click on it, follows you or not. Like I can literally see, even just by the content, by the tone even. I had somebody recently, this sticks in my memory. I had a guy reply, yeah, well, like, I guess that's blah, 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 I think, right? And I could immediately tell just from his lack of certainty in the way he was presenting what he was saying. I knew that's not somebody that follows me.
Right.
Because people that follow me have confidence and believe in themselves and speak with their chest. So yes. I genuinely have like a psychic radar. I can tell when I'm speaking to my people and when someone's just drifted in and they just took a wrong turn.
You know, one area that these conversations always tend to overlap with, I think it's partly just because these are the people who have the most like available time to be online and annoy people, is essentially like young men and how they've been raised in society and do they have mentor figures and stuff. Because if you ever look into it, like I forget who said this, it was someone in the political sphere made this point on Twitter, but I thought it was so right, is if you ever see what is considered sort of cool behavior among the kind of person who's a reply guy on Twitter, dude, it's so weird how they've been programmed, because someone nailed this. It's like they were all spiritually influenced by fucking Chandler from Friends. Even though if you ever stop and think about it, one, that's not a funny show, and two, that character is the most dislikable character. Like, it's all just dog shit snark. You know, it's the kind of thing like when you're 13 seems cool, but when you're actually an adult, you're like, actually, you didn't really get him there. You just said something stupid. You know, like it's weird, isn't it? Because you know exactly what I'm talking about. The sort of almost the texture of how a reply guy talks. Like, it's like you're saying, like, well, you know, I guess we could say that then, mate. Like, you're having a normal, but it's all that like weird sort of slightly distant snark where they're trying to act aloof in a way.
Vocabulary.
Yes, exactly.
You can tell you're like, oh, okay, this guy's from Reddit. It's got this certain, it's like this cool like dad bod, you know, a bit of a soy face.
Yes.
You can see like somebody who thinks Seth Green, not Seth Green, what's his name?
Seth MacFarlane.
No, Rogan.
Rogan, right? Yes.
Like Seth Rogen, yes. Right? Like you can tell when it's that sort of personality. It's a very strange thing.
Because it's like, I mean, we actually had a little interaction the other day that was like this. Like I say, whenever someone does that tweet, mate, where they go like, ha, you must be fun at parties. It's like, mate, that's such a mad, like, counter signal that you're a moron. Because one, we're not at a party, we're on the fucking internet talking on two texts, you know, so already it's a mad inappropriate framing. And then secondly, it's like I said on Twitter, who has ever met someone who said, you must be fun at parties, who actually thought, wow, this person is awesome. I bet they're amazing at parties. Nobody, like, the joke is they must be fun at parties almost is what like the meme of the guy in the corner looking at the people in the party would be thinking while he dismisses the fact he's not like wanted at the party in a fucked up way. Like that whole tone, like as soon as I see it, mate, it's the same thing. I almost don't even need to know who they are, what they're saying. Like as soon as I sense that vibe, it's like, oh, this isn't about me, mate. You're just mad about some other shit in life. Like whatever happened to you, I'm sorry it happened and all that, but it ain't me, I'm afraid.
You're cracking me up.
How do you deal with that stuff? Because I mean, obviously, one of the worst things about being the online persona, etc., is you, especially if you made an interesting point, you sometimes want discourse. You want someone to say something interesting back. But when you sort of realize it is just like the 2 minutes of hate and they're just screaming at the TV, it's not about you. How do you handle that? How do you frame it?
Look, I value everything in a term of, you know, I think Nietzsche said it best. He said the question is, how much truth can I handle?
Okay.
Right. So I actually, if you disagree with me, if I'm wrong, let me know. Okay. I want to be as stringent and as clear and just precise with every point and belief that I have, that if somebody can challenge that to make it more correct, I absolutely welcome it. And I'll change, you know, my attitude to be completely open-minded. Right. So when I come from that point, I know that if I say something, it's because I'm very well researched on it. I've done my extensive background and I've checked to see if I'm wrong, right? So if somebody comes along and they disagree with it, I know that chances are they haven't been as stringent in their filtering process as I have.
Right.
So chances are it's going to be some kind of cope for why they want to justify looking in the world the way that they do. So I always approach it from that. And, I just got to laugh because, let's have a talk about it. Okay, you are wrong.
Yes.
Let's see why.
Oh, I think you nailed it there, mate. Like one thing I would even say in that sense is most people, when they argue with you online, it sounds like they're just trying to convince themselves, if you know what I mean. Like they don't ever seem secure in their opinion. You know what I mean? Like the obvious example would be, I'll give you a quick one. Even in my field in esports, which you would think to yourself, what arguments could you have beyond like, who's a good player or not? But I'll give you an obvious example. Everyone in my field is totally closed off to the idea there could be anything harmful about playing video games or being a pro at video games or sitting on a computer 10 hours a day, or maybe they're addictive, they're not even open to the idea, mate. Like, it's not that you have to accept it and say it's true, but like when some story comes out, I've always thought to myself, well, look, I'm in the field, so I would be interested to know if there was something like that. Maybe there is, maybe there's some downside I'm not aware of. Since they don't even want to address it, it'll all be cope, mate. Like, it'll just immediately be like, well, of course, this will just be some politician bought this. Or, well, so you're saying that it's better to just be in the streets, kill it. They'll immediately go to some cognitive dissonance, I feel like. They don't feel like they ever engage with the topic itself,
Yeah. That reminds me of a quote by, I think it was Aristotle, who said, "It is the mark of an educated mind to entertain a thought without accepting it." So I think that it says everything right there.
Yeah. Because another thing as well I wanted to ask you about, because I notice whenever you have the same problem I do, mate, which is whenever you actually do drop a gem, or I like to just call them breadcrumbs, because my style is I also don't actually think you should essentially tell everyone all the secrets you find, because some of them are secrets of reason, like they're hard-earned, like you need experience to understand them, or you have to go through a certain process. I sometimes describe it like this. If I say a secret, everyone wants to know what they are. But if I said the ending of a movie, you wouldn't want to know the ending to all the fucking movies and books before you read them and watched them. Like, there's certain things you're supposed to go through a process to arrive at, and it's going to be more valuable. Yes. So like, I've noticed whenever me or you drop a gem like that, mate, there are two sorts of people in the comments. It's people who are either just like, what do you mean exactly by that, though? Like, I'll post something, dude, where I'm intentionally not saying, like, the words that get me in trouble. I'm like, it's weird how political figures can do anything about a certain cause, and then other people in the industry won't address it. And people will be like, what people? Who? Like, source? Like, can you say exactly who they are and what they're doing? It's like, bro, I'm obviously not doing that on purpose, aren't I? Like, I didn't forget to put the names in. And then so essentially there's the idiot that needs to be spoon-fed everything and doesn't want to do no legwork at all. And then the other angle is the person where I actually think it's the same person, dude, but with a different antisocial perspective. The other angle is the one who does do like sauce. Like, if they really thought what you were saying was nonsense, they like, in a fucked up way, that guy's actually sort of saying, look, I'm antisocial, so I can't just say, please give me more information, but I'm just going to sort of challenge you to do it, because if you did that to me, because I'm sort of like a shitty reply guy, I would immediately post a source and prove you, it's almost like they're also trying to get more info. Like, have you ever noticed this by the response? Like, you want them to just take the little, it's like you feel like some Zen master, but you want to just give them this little thing and just think about that for a while, but they don't. They want more, or they want like a different angle on it, or they want you to explain why what they think's not the case or something. What do you think about this approach? I know you get a lot of this in your replies, mate.
You nailed it. You said like a Zen master, you just want to give the little crumb, right? So this is something I'm very passionate about. Okay, I have a mentor who, is my spiritual mentor, and he does something amazing that I never experienced before with anybody, right? Aside from my parents, and I'll get into that in just a second. But whenever I would ask a question, he would almost never, ever answer it.
Right.
And, I used to get frustrated at this, and I'd complain to people. I'd be like, look, I'm trying to ask these things, and he just never spills it out. And then I realized, with some maturity and reflection, it struck me as the most genius thing ever. And it's, that's because, he's not giving me the answer because he's giving me just a little bit of a nudge enough that I'll actually embark on my own journey of discovery and arrive at it myself, having gained so many more valuable tools than I would not otherwise have had if he just told me, oh yeah, the answer is this.
Yes.
Right? Because that's part of it, right? Growing up, my parents instilled in this very, very well. whenever I would ask a question, they would never just give it straight to me. They would at minimum say, I don't know, you tell me. And at least force me to guess, at least attempt some kind of thinking in my brain rather than just outsourcing it, which is what a lot of people online and in general tend to do.
Yes.
So I'll often talk about health. I'll often, say, go to the sauna or take this supplement. People will ask, oh, but how long? But how many minutes? Oh,
I love that. They think you're the doctor, don't they? I know.
Oh, what brand and how much should I take and how long do I wait between meals? And it's like, bro, okay, even if I had the precise exact answer for you, which I don't always do, you need to go and find out yourself, all right? Yes. You're not going to die by, supplementing with some creatine, right? No matter how you take it, you're not going to find yourself in the hospital. So just try different dosages, see what's happening and how you personally respond to it, right? So Thorin, I've said this so many times that I've wrapped it up in a nice little bubble and I just spit this meme out. Maybe you've seen it. It's be a scientist, right? Instead of wanting every single thing spoon-fed to you, how about you do this? How about you take your hypothesis, you think about, maybe this will happen as a result of this, and then you go and test it, and then you experiment on it, and then you reflect upon your results, right? And then you can analyze that. And by doing that, you've gained a pearl of wisdom. You've found out how the world actually works in relation to specifically you and your actions. And by doing that, you can move through the world in a very scientific method-oriented way, where you've got your tried and true things that actually work, that work because you went out of your way to test it yourself.
Yes. By the way, one thing that's quite interesting that I'd love to know about, not necessarily the specifics, but again, more abstractly, about the premise of having someone who you consider a mentor. Because actually one thing, this is actually quite interesting. I first heard this, believe it or not, from actually someone in esports. There was a guy I did an interview with who'd been retired like 10, 15 years. He was a bit more reflective about his career. And he actually said that he actually thought the best way you could learn anything was through the process of having a mentor yourself who you learn things from and prompt you, like you say, to push you in the directions that challenge you. But then he also said it was like key to have people who were your mentees, that essentially how you explain to them or how you pass stuff on to them is another way of showing that you've processed the information, you've understood it, you can take it apart, you can answer their questions, you know how to prompt them to do the next part without giving them just the answer written down. Like when he explained it to me, it made me realize, it almost like formalized how I was learning things myself, because I often think another area that's very clever societies programmed people is, especially online media, is all about, once you find someone interesting who's a certain personality, people either just take them like they're God and just everything they say is right, or the counter to that is they find one flaw, could be any flaw, could be this person used to be on drugs, or this person, cheated on his wife, or what, and they act like you can just throw the baby out with the bathwater, like, right, just dismiss everything they say, so it's either all mega or it's all just shite. Whereas to me, it's like, dude, I don't know any person like that. Like, the joke is you can almost take some value from each person if you could really tap into what they were about, So what's your sense of like what it's like to have a mentor? What's the necessity? What role does it play for you?
Yeah, I just want to touch on what you just said masterfully, and that was the if some people find one little wrong thing in a person and then just they don't listen to anything else that they've got to say, right?
Yes,
I think that's just not being an objective, intelligent individual, right? Even the most horrific, most evil people on the planet, you can find elements of that person to admire, right? Like, I don't want to name any names to get in trouble,
sure,
right? But even the most despicable human beings, maybe you can at least admire their way that they had with people, or their ability to use words to convince people, or just, the level of their mindset, the way that they were thinking, right? As far and high as they did, that you don't have to like the person.
Yes.
To respect them. So I think there's a very different thing. Even with like, even if it's something as bad as like the CIA, right? Just running massive psyops on people, right? I can still respect their level of execution, right?
Yeah,
even if
absolutely.
I don't agree with what they did, if it was reprehensible, there's, you need to just observe elements rather than just one entire person, because nobody's perfect. If you look hard enough, nobody's perfect. So it's just a question of to what degree. But really, Bruce Lee put this the best. He said, absorb what is useful, discard what is not, and add uniquely what is your own. Okay, so you don't have to like anybody to be able to respect and say objectively, that person is very skilled at that thing, and I admire them for that, right? So too many people, they do not have that objective, they can't separate the person from the game.
Yes. What about the mentor relationship angle?
Oh, with a mentor.
Yeah.
Mentors are absolutely invaluable. I mean, anybody who's anybody for all of history has likely been guided by a mentor, right? So the most famous example I like to give is Socrates mentored Plato, and Plato mentored Aristotle, and Aristotle mentored Alexander the Great, right? So
pretty good line right there.
One of the most successful human beings of all time had a mentor. And some people are walking around today thinking, oh, I don't need any guidance with anything. I can figure this out on myself. It's just simply not the case. Okay. Somebody who's done the thing you're trying to do is, 10, 20 years older, who's made all the mistakes you're going to make and will tell you how to avoid them. It's just absolutely invaluable. And anybody who's done anything noteworthy in all of history had a mentor behind them.
Yes. Thing is, now I'm just imagining like fucking Socrates on, money Twitter with his Gumroad costs, and then Aristotle and Plato, like affiliate marketing for him, like everyone does with certain online influencers, and everyone's like, no, they're a scam, and they're obviously just a scam, bro. Look, he's corrupting the youth. He's full of shit.
Yeah.
What a ridiculous world. By the way, one other thing a big topic I want to get onto with you as well, because I noticed essentially, like you said it all in the outset of how you do things, a lot of your stuff is mindset. Like, it's actually obvious if people look at the way you tweet that you have a passion for it, that you actually care about what you're saying. That, I guess you say you want it to have an impact on other people and to penetrate their psyche and for them to think about it and ruminate on it and to have an effect. Because it's funny, here's the thing I've noticed, mate, and it's mainly because I'm in a similar position myself. And like I say, I've tried to almost like use this as an anthropological exercise being on social media, like look at what the other humans are like and how they react and stuff. And one thing I've noticed you get a similar thing I do, mate, which is when you're actually trying to be authentic, but there might be an area you've thought about a lot, or you're trying to, a classic example is you're trying to be like a mentor. You're trying to not just put the idea out there, but you're trying to sort of provoke the kind of person who needs it the most to engage with it, maybe by being a little bit caustic or a little bit annoying. If you do that, a lot of people will just read that as like, you're just arrogant, or you just think you know everything. It's all, again, it already sounds like cope when I say it like that, doesn't it? Like, what do you say in that regard? Because again, I get the sense that you just, like, if your whole thing is mindset, positivity, confidence, having self-esteem, having it be based on real things that have tangible metrics for you as a human, like putting effort in exercise, putting effort, build up your social skills. It sounds to me like you're a very positive person, but it gets skewed as negative, if you know what I mean, as you're just being arrogant, right?
Yeah, people will do that, and again, it's the projection thing we talked about earlier. But oh man, why do you think that is?
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the tough things, because I also feel like I always come back to it. It feels to me like what people usually communicate is what's going on inside their landscape. It's not really what they're observing externally. So I always got the vibe when people do that. I'll just be real. Again, if you think of the sort of the reply guy thing, notice how the type of humor they use, you have to create an ironic distance from you and the subject. They're never talking to you. It's always like, well, my guy, I don't know if you're having a normal one today. That's all for the onlookers. That they hope that their little gang of goonies is watching that and going, wow, haha, you really got him there. Like, they're not actually interacting with you as a human. They're not even actually granting you the right of being a human, are they? They're sort of dehumanizing by putting you as like,
no, you're
just some guy they're reeling at on the TV, aren't you? Some idiot that they're not allowed to, you're not even allowed to be a real person at that point in time. So I feel like when people do that sort of thing, part of it is that they, it's a way for them to never have to address what you're talking about, if you know what I mean. Like that's why I give the example of, I can tell sometimes you intend, like I do this as well. You could say that you could sit down and craft the point and say it in the most perfect, neutral way ever that doesn't have anything to trigger. But sometimes, like I say, the kind of person who needs that medicine the most needs to be triggered a bit. You have to almost like, inflame the part of them that's in denial or is resisting them actually taking the info in. You have to almost fuck with them a bit. It's why, if you notice, but I'll give you a very famous example. It's a very classic technique among like the manosphere type influencers to provoke you with the information. They wouldn't just say, you know, you should do this because it'll make you appear like a more confident person. They'll frame it as like you're a fucking pussy if you don't, and you're a coward if you. But they'll do that as a way to sort of make you think like, wait, am I? Like maybe I am. Maybe I do just be your fake nice because I don't have confidence. You know, I feel like that's a part of it.
No, you're exactly right. I do love doing that. Sometimes I feel like I'm Rafiki from the Bloody Lion King, right? It's some people, because not everybody will respond to something the same. Some people need that specific nudge in the backside to really get them thinking about the thing. Otherwise, the mind would just reject it. They just wouldn't engage with it deeply. So when you put it in this abrasive manner and then you kind of poke their buttons and, you know, you poke their sore spots a little bit, it actually gets them to think. And for some people, that's the only way that you can possibly penetrate them.
Yes. I mean, it's like you said, I know on your Twitter, I've seen in the past, you read like Prometheus Rising by Robert Anton Wilson and a few different books like that. If people don't know, that's essentially one of his main writing styles. Is like the trickster style, right? It's the idea that you're not just, first of all, you don't want to be too obvious. You want it to be like they have to question even you and the way you're talking. Like, does this guy know what he's talking about? Is this angle here? It's like, I feel like that's even built into it. That's almost like part of the process, right? Because again, like you're saying, you actually don't want them to think you're the guru and just bow at your feet, right? You want them to sort of become their own guru, if it makes sense.
No, so exactly right. The whole thing is, you know, I will intentionally be very, very serious and then be completely joking and then say something that's a bit in the middle. So people are like, is he being serious or not? And they genuinely don't know. And by doing that, you cause almost a spark to go off in their mind to think, hang on a second, I need to be careful about how I'm going to pass this information, right? Because, you know, not to, you know, grease my own shaft, but if you're just on a bam, bam, bam streak and everything you're saying is just fluid fire, right? It's just hitting them. People can kind of almost get lazy with thinking about it because they fall into this form of, you know, everything that's going to say is just going to be absolutely the truth. And they're not actually taking the time to think about it. So, you know, this reminds me of a certain persuasion technique called a yes set. I'm not sure if you're familiar with it, but it's a thing where you ask somebody 2 easy layup questions, right? Yeah. And then you hit them with a third. So they say yes, yes, and yes. And by doing that, you massively increase the chance that they'll be compliant.
There's like a momentum they build up.
Yeah. Oh, are you awake right now? Yes. Are you breathing? Yes. Okay, well, do you want to go and you buy this thing? Right? That's how it's used. Right. So people can almost get into the habit of blindly trusting you too much. Right? So by making them think, oh, hang on a second. Is he being serious? Is he joking? I need to actually think, because ultimately my goal is not to be worshipped, right? My goal is to make the person an independent thinker. Yes. The best teachers, they don't tell you what to think, they tell you how to think, right? So be a scientist, I want to drive that so far home for people to really engage rather than wanting every answer spoon-fed. Rather than being lazy in thinking, to actually critically pass things, to question them, to go, hang on a second, you know, what's the motive behind this? What kind of perspective has this person really got? What do they want me to believe? Why? You know, dig deep on every single thing you've ever been told to think. Yes. And by doing that, you actually become extremely wise very, very quickly.
One thing I've noticed about your output is you are someone where you almost seem like relentlessly optimistic. Like I would actually even say irrationally optimistic, because I get the vibe, but one of the secrets you've uncovered from reading your feed is it's the other way around. It's like actually you can actually sort of turn life so that even the things that are negatives seem like positives or seem like you get something out of it, or still seems like it gives even more reason to be optimistic. It seems like you're almost like a relentless optimism tip. Would that be accurate to say?
Oh, absolutely. You know, this is something I'm so big on, and it was not always there. I had to practice this until it became a permanent habit, and that is to view yourself as absolutely anti-fragile. No matter what situational circumstance you find yourself in, as bad as it could be, there is going to be a silver lining in that cloud that's going to make you stronger, right? And that is, look, I've been through a lot in my life, just inhuman levels of stress that would just cripple the average man, right? And I've never been weakened because of them. I've always been strengthened. And that's simply for the one perspective of, how is this going to make me stronger? How is it going to make me better?
Yes.
Right. So every challenging circumstance, and everybody's going to get hit. It doesn't matter who you are. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. Okay.
Yes.
You're going to have dark days. There's going to be days when you absolutely don't even want to get out of bed because what awaits you is so terrifying and frightening. Right. You're going to be, sick to your stomach. You're going to find massive amounts of anxiety. It's just, life is going to happen at you. Right. So you've got to ask yourself, how am I going to respond to this? Okay. Because it actually doesn't matter what it is. The only thing that matters is how you interpret it. And the best way to interpret it is that it's only going to empower you. It's only going to make you smarter. It's only going to make you tougher, wiser, stronger, better. So that's the way which I look through everything. It doesn't matter how bad, right? There's always something that you can be really, really thankful for in the moment.
Yes. And I feel like that's actually, in my opinion, one of the reasons why you've had the response and the success you have online, because that's actually somewhat antithetical to what I would almost call like the sentiment of our age, which is the sentiment of our age is everyone find the way in which they're a victim and take turns trying to outcompete each other for how terrible what's happened to you is. And if you notice, it's always built in that story of like the idea, it's almost like Batman's origin story. It's like, it doesn't matter how well Batman does killing criminals. He never addresses the fact that he's apparently traumatized from being a child and seeing his parents killed. Like, he never ever attempts to work on that, you'll notice. If anything, his justification for beating people up is that shit happened to him when he was a kid. Like, I think even with a mad example, like a fictional one I'm using there, like, that's how people almost want things to be now. Like, it's like once they've got the excuse, which is whatever made them a victim, they almost seem angry if you want to help them get rid of it, if you know what I mean, or move on from it.
Absolutely.
Whereas to me, like you're saying, I think it's essential. Like, I actually think the more darkest and the more horrible things have happened, I could tell similar stories myself. Those are actually when I've been able to use this kind of a process. I've almost used that to forge the best parts of my life now and the strongest parts. I kind of don't let it, in a fucked up way, mate. I know this will sound mad, but I actually almost do. I'm almost on some weird level grateful to even the people who did horrible things to me back then. Like, they helped me level up, if you know what I mean.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. I couldn't put it better myself.
Because one thing I've noticed is another part of your thinking along these lines is it's part of I see how you tweet. And if people don't notice, there's a reason you hit certain topics and repeat them and go back to the well on an idea and craft it a little bit more. If people don't know, one of the main things you like to push is that Terminator recording you did, where it's essentially like it's this kind of self-hypnosis, right? Like, can you tell me a little bit about that? Like, I noticed that's actually part of your thinking is like you can program yourself, right? You don't have to just let other people program you.
Absolutely. So if you see, something that me and my good friend Fraser like to pump through our group is the idea of program or be programmed. And It's the simple fact of this. It's you are programmed. Doesn't matter in which possible disposition you are. You have been led to believe that by the things you've heard your parents say, things you've heard society say, the things you think your friends will say, right? All these things, they lead to a very specific, what it is, programming that if you don't actually take the time to consciously set some time aside and go, how do I want to think? Okay, and how am I going to enforce this method of thinking? Unless you do that, your complete mindset, the entire attitude, your entire perspective on life is going to be the simple result of whatever has happened to stumble in your environment by chance. Okay, so one thing I'm so massive on is deliberately cultivate the way in which you think. Okay, you need to actually understand that your subconscious is always listening, right? That's a great line by one of the greatest hypnotherapists of all time, Milton Erickson. And the subconscious is always listening.
Yeah.
If you take that concept, you understand that there is nothing that escapes the contribution of the way that you look through life. Okay, your whole mind, every little thing, even if it's as simple as a television ad or something you see on a sign, every little bit of data that your brain collects, it is storing and it is drawing upon that within the future in order to think, in order to behave, in order to believe. So, it's of absolutely crucial importance that you program yourself. And Terminate is something that I created as a hypnosis track to listen to that is taking charge, is actually, taking initiative in programming the way you think. And so what it is I was watching the Terminator one day, and, I'm just there with my family. We were watching, it's a Friday night movie, and I absolutely became enthralled with it because of this particular scene where, the guy who's running away, he's in the car and it's explaining to his lady, he's saying, look, you don't understand. That Terminator is out there. It doesn't feel pity or fear, right? Yeah. And this hit me like a lightning bolt in my brain. I thought, wow, the Terminator does not feel pity, remorse, or fear, right? Like, what kind of human, how far would you be in terms of success?
Sure.
If you were to take on this sort of robot kind of way of thinking where you don't feel fear. I mean, so that just fascinated me. And I immediately took to creating a track and where it's got the Terminator voice and it's constantly bombarding you with 1,400 affirmations within this 20-minute track to really instill this kind of mindset. Because I thought deeply on this. Every time that I fell short of a goal, or every time that I wasn't living in the way that I wanted to in my mind and that I knew I could, it was always because I was being held by these things that, not to make it sound like a gloomy way, but just normal human things.
Oh, for sure, right? Yeah.
Like, you have fear for a reason. It protects you. It saves you. It's going to stop you from jumping out into traffic, right? Like, you need fear to a degree. But it's, we've lived in a world where we're still equipped with the same neurology that protects us from saber-toothed tigers, right? So, for one of the things is most of us care greatly about the opinions of other people. And this serves, it's wired into us, hardwired, for a very good reason, okay? Yes. We used to live in tribes. If you're not concerned with what the tribe thinks of you, you could be exiled.
Yes.
And then you'd be all alone, and that would mean that you'd starve to death or predators would get you. Yes. Being alone and exiled was the worst fear of early man, right? Yeah. So we've still got that hardwired into us to where we inordinately care about what other people think, even though if you look at it on paper, it doesn't really make much sense.
No. I mean, it's why the cancel culture shit does work, right? Because you feel like you're going to get kicked out the tribe.
It's work. It's effective, right?
Agreed.
Because there's honestly, it's one of people's greatest fears, not being kicked out of the tribe, but people thinking badly of them and saying it and it being loud and actually being criticized and reprimanded, right? It is something that has crushed more dreams than almost anything on the other planet. What will other people think of me, right? So when I'm sitting there watching the Terminator, I thought, the Terminator doesn't care if people think, do you think it gives a single fuck about what people think of it? No, right? It will jump straight into the bar and it will find John Connor and it will raise the gun right in the middle of the dance floor, right? Yeah. It could not be less concerned with what other people thought. So I thought, imagine if I took that, if I isolated that, if I extracted that kind of mindset and I injected it into an audio track that would hypnotize me into thinking that way, what would happen? And so that's how I created Terminate. Because that idea, what we just discussed, if we can remove that and we can adjust, our hardwiring and we can reprogram our subconscious mind to be more like that of a Terminator who's unperturbed, who does not take human, weakness, falling shorts into consideration. It just goes. It does not stop until the objective is completed. It has zero anything else on its mind other than to win. So that just fascinated me, and I had to make it. So I put it together and I gave it out to a test batch of about just 10 of my friends. And I said, hey, look, give me a completely unbiased, view of this. I want you to listen to this day and night for 2 weeks. And then I'm not even going to prime you with anything else. Just tell me what you noticed. That's it. And every single person that got back to me said nothing but, oh my goodness, I cannot even recognize how relentless I am, how motivated, how driven, how just flawlessly ambitious and just full gun ahead, just fearless charging I am. And that was my exact goal. And so once I've done that, I was so happy because I knew I've created exactly what I wanted, not only in myself, but in other people. And so, yeah, I've got that available for people. And I get testimonies literally every single day. If you see on my Twitter, there won't be a day that goes by without somebody, either mentioning me or thanking me for creating Terminate, because it is just an absolute weapon. So nothing brings a bigger smile on my face than someone to say, hey, look, I started listening to this and then I can't even recognize myself anymore. I don't even know what to say. You've changed my life, right? That to me is the most rewarding thing I can possibly feel. Like it's just amazing. So I absolutely love it.
One thing you talked about there is the idea of like curating. And I actually think that's a big topic here as well, because like, if people know there was a joke that came around as a meme like the last year or two, the one where the guy goes like, oh, I hate Subway, the sandwich company. And then the joke is you go like, my brother, you pick the sandwich. Like, if you go to Subway, like at the end of the day, it is just sandwiches. Like, if you think they all suck, you probably aren't picking a sandwich you like is the obvious response. But people don't see that with their online experience. Like, I would say in general, a big tip I'm sort of on, it's not just for your social media feed, but everything. I would even say literally your physical environment, a bit of a breadcrumb there. Environment's everything as far as I can tell, because environment is like the inputs, it's the influence over your being, and then your outputs are going to be adjusted based on that appropriately, inappropriately, depending on how much of these things there are. And so I will even say, while I might be someone who complains a bit about social media in that sense, so to some degree, I'm the guy complaining about the sandwich. I mainly just complain when it's in the area where I sort of have to be a bit connected because of my work. Aside from that, I think I've taken away the majority of my like frustration with social media, mate. Like what I've done for real is I actually did sit down over a few weeks and critically think like this account here, does it actually like make me feel good? Does it give me interest and info? Does it provoke thought? Or is it just like, so for example, the classic one I think people fall into the trap of is actually those accounts that dunk on people. It's like, bro, a lot of that, like it is funny, but it's only funny in sort of like, let's all agree we're just going to laugh at this person, like fuck this person. Like even that carries kind of a negativity, you know? So one of the things I've done the last few years or so, I'd say, is I've tried to like remove more of the sort of, I would say, unhelpful inputs from my environment, and even put in simple things like, it's why I notice a lot of people have done this, man. I'm not the one who figured it out. It's why a lot of people in our space follow all the aesthetic accounts and all the architecture and amazing art. And because when you wake up, it is different to read a thing that goes, you know, and then in American politics, of course, the other side are all evil bastards. Whereas instead, if you wake up and the first thing you see just blasted into your eyes is some like insane palatial estate in France from like the 1700s with like the most god-tier intricate architecture and diamonds glistening and gold and some religious icon on the wall. Mate, the input, you just wake up like, whoa, that's like fucking, that's like espresso for the soul. You know what I mean?
Yes. Curating your inputs is one of the most important endeavors you need to really master, right? One of my mentors likes to say, it's a great line. It's on a long enough time frame, environment will trump will every single time, right? So no matter what conscious effort you exude, your environment, it's going to get you sooner or later, right? Because it's so persistent. So because of that, and this is something I really want everybody listening right now to take home, is with every person that you follow on social media, you're giving them permission to program you, right? Because all you need to
have direct access to your brain. Exactly.
Like we said earlier, the subconscious is always listening. So even if it's just the odd thing here and there, like if someone's being negative, if someone's being, pessimistic or just unexcited about life, I don't follow them at all, right? The only things that I see are from things that align with the way that I want to think, right? And so create your own echo chamber. People say, you're in an echo chamber, that's a bad thing. No, it's a good thing.
Yes.
It keeps me in an extremely high energy state that's extremely optimistic with a bulletproof mindset. So I will stay in my echo chamber. Thank you very much. So you need to go through your following and really evaluate, do I want to continue this to be continually dripped, like an IV down into the veins of my brain, right? If not, even if you have to question it, even if you're not sure, then that's probably an unfollow. Only keep the people that you are absolutely certain, yes, that's the kind of stuff I want to keep seeing. That's the kind of stuff I want to train my mind on. That's how I want to encourage myself to think more. That's what I'll keep. And just by doing that alone, you will massively, massively create your entire mindset will change just from that alone. And it's such a small thing, but it has an enormous influence to a degree that many people currently have no conception over. Like, you genuinely do not realize how massive of a change that is. Stop listening to garbage songs, promoting all these things that, put you in a low vibrational state that make you, feel all this hate, and like, be genuinely conscious of it. Is this the way that I want to think? And if it's not, get rid of it in every kind of medium. And once you've done this, throughout your whole life, you've cultivated a beautiful garden that's continually feeding your mind in the way that you choose. You are selecting the programming rather than being programmed at random.
Yes. I would even say as well, another thing I actually enjoy about your approach to social media is you seem like, even though you're definitely discerning, like you will find things you think are wrong or you disagree with or you dispute or whatever, you seem very open to new ideas. Because one thing I've noticed as well, really changed my perspective, is when I stopped picking people to follow who just think what I think or I think a bit like me. And there are people where my whole thing is it's how you do it. Like, as long as you're not someone where there's some like hateful invective or you just like antagonistic in a way where it's like you don't want anyone to listen. As long as you're not like that, you can have a very different perspective from me, and I might be interested in following it. I always give this example that there's a person I follow, and I intentionally don't say who to all the reply guys. Like, but who exactly is it though? Is it this guy here? It's like the whole point is it isn't about this specific person, guys. So there's a person I follow online who I'll just say is an open communist and is like does loads of articles that are stuff like essentially what people would call like apologia for like communist China and even like Stalin and stuff. He has some wild takes, bro, but here's the thing, the way he structures his arguments, the way he sort of like does give his own perspective on history, he's a very well-read individual, someone who's obviously thought about a lot. I can still vibe with sort of the technique, as it were, even though I don't agree with the conclusions, as it were. So like that's something else I've tried to do. I do still allow some people inside my space that aren't necessarily like in my vein of thinking, but it's more like I'm interested in people where their mind works a certain way or the way that they attack certain information. Even just that process can be interesting to me. Do you have a similar experience online?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it was Frank Zappa who said, a mind is like a parachute. It doesn't work if it isn't open. Right. So once I heard that, it like blew my mind. You absolutely need to engage with things that challenge, right? So it's different what we're talking about in terms of cultivating mindset, because that's attitude. Yes. But when we're talking about actual specific points or about how things work or ideas and perspectives, it's a very Robert Anton Wilson approach. Yes. He gives this in Prometheus Rising. Go and read something that you would never otherwise read. Like intentionally engage. I think he even said, if people don't know, that he for real would like subscribe to like super, like a bit like what I was saying, like quite extreme, like political stuff from people. He definitely did. Absolutely. Because he just wanted sort of like, like the input to be able to process, right? No. Robert Anton Wilson would read Marxist books, like just straight out there, the most polar thing to how he actually thought, just for the sake of challenging his mind. Because again, if you don't do that, you get lazy just agreeing all the time. So by doing that, you become someone who becomes absolutely very intellectually honest. Yes. By the way, one thing I also want to discuss with you, because I've noticed this has been another... The reason why I picked you, like I said at the beginning, is you didn't get your notoriety or following from like a specific thing you sold or a service you offered. You actually built it up through your personality. Like it's people essentially connecting with you and what you think. So one thing I want to ask you about in that sense is, I feel like just as an outsider looking in, I feel like you must have had a similar experience to me. One of the coolest things about doing that, essentially knowing that it wasn't like some technique, you weren't tricking,
people just vibe with you is, look, yeah, there's going to be plenty of people who don't vibe with you, and it's going to even seem like, fuck, why'd I put this out there? Like, now people just hate on me. But it's like, you have to look at the totality. Like, as much as there are people who will be repelled by you, there are people, you must have noticed this, become just magnetically drawn to you. And the coolest thing I will say about my experience online has been, dude, even though to me, I think of my Twitter feed as like, it's like 99% about video games that you have to care about in a very specific way. I'm always amazed by the number of people I'm interested in and who I vibe with and who I just followed that then start following me because they've seen some of my, and it makes me realize, like, dude, that must essentially mean the guy can put up with 99% of the stuff I say has nothing of interest to him, but it means every now and then, the one time I'm saying something abstract or something about politics, that must just vibe with that guy. Like, essentially, something's drawn us together in a way. I feel like that process is very cool because you suddenly start to see that you do sort of get the circle you deserve in a way.
Yeah, I never thought about that as specifically as you put it.
Have you had that happen to you?
Your stuff is 99% video games.
It is, mate. If you're not interested in esports, it could be very boring, right? You know, I wouldn't blame him for the unfollowed in that sense. So it's almost a compliment if they don't.
Testament.
Yes.
No, that is pure testament to the 1% that isn't video games that can actually, relate to and pay attention to and interact with. It's so valuable that you're willing to tolerate the 99%.
Yes.
I never thought about it in that way. But yeah, there's amazing just the similarities in what you can find within people.
Did you get that sense that people are drawn to you who are your kind of people, or the people you'd actually want to be around or build up a friend group? Like, I feel like you don't have to consciously do it online. Like I say, it's just you put the vibe out there and they're almost as like an auric effect. People just get drawn into your field.
Yeah, I know.
It seems like your friend group's like that, right?
Honestly, the way that, yeah, you absolutely nailed it. The way that I talk, it's just in such a way that, if you were sitting next to me, it's just a very casual, hey, bro, by the way, blah, blah, blah. Like, I'm speaking very directly to you. So it cultivates this sort of kind of, I'm at a loss for words. I don't even know how to describe it. But it's just this very, I don't know, Thor, how would you describe it? You know what I'm trying to say?
I mean, I would just say that, like, in a weird way, it feels like, it's slightly confirmation bias, but it just feels like you're on the right track. I mean, this actually leads into another thing I did want to discuss with you, which is another thing I really vibe with about your approach is, even from when I was a little kid, like, someone could just think you were just a smart-ass kid, but it's like there's more to it than this. As a kid, I've always thought, mate, if you can explain something to me and it doesn't make sense, but I am genuinely trying to understand, I'm trying to see your perspective, I'm trying to put myself in your position, to accept the initial premise, to consider the logical arguments you're making, to look at the way you've structured it. If after all that it doesn't make sense to me, I don't do what a lot of people do, which is go, oh, well, they're smarter than me. And I go, look, mate, I'm sorry. To me, it doesn't make sense. I reject that because it just, look, maybe sometimes true. I might be that point in my life, I'm not ready for that or whatever. But in general, it just doesn't work for me. So what I would say is I come from a perspective in the world that even as an individual, you can look out on the world and you don't have to accept almost anyone's authority on stuff. And in fact, you don't have to accept the specific method that everyone's laid down or says is the best. Like, as much as this is where it gets mildly controversial, but I'll say it abstractly, when it comes to things like health or exercise or mindset or what philosophy or ideology you follow, I do think each person you can sort of figure it out yourself. And so to me, a heavy element, and I think I get this vibe from your work, is a lot of it for me, I'll just say outright, is just intuition. Essentially, I trust the voice of my intuition over any external voice. And it took a long time, I would say, to build it up and to know how to listen to it and to know what that is. And for example, obviously, you get confused early on. Maybe it is just like your desire or your lust or some weird impulse. And you have to learn to sort of go, no, that's not right. That's actually behind that. There's something deeper where it's like, I know I shouldn't do that, or I want to do this, or I vibe with that. That's my guide in life, mate. I know people are going to think it's woo-woo, but spoiler, I get the vibe from your stuff as well. The point is, the reason why people get put off by woo-woo is because, yes, there are con artists there, but that's because they're mimicking what works in the woo-woo, if you know what I mean. It's a pretty open-ended topic. So what do you think on this? Because I feel like there's a lot of intuitive drive in your persona, right?
I can't get over intuition. I'm heavy on it, right? I'm always pushing people to trust it because, again, it goes back to what Milton Erickson was saying. Your subconscious is always listening. Okay, yes. The subconscious is such an amazing faculty where it's recording everything, okay? So imagine if you, for example, you had an app on your phone that you could bring out and then say, hey, person who's, let's pretend it's a super smart AI, right? AI that's connected to my brain who has seen every single thing that I've ever seen, heard every single thing I've ever heard. Yep. Can you please tell me the answer to this? Right? Yes. So your subconscious is the world's greatest supercomputer, and the conclusions of it form your intuition. So using your intuition is such a massive thing that I'm a proponent of, including with be your own, be a scientist. Because one thing that you'll find online, I'm not sure if you find this personally, Thorin, is people will ask a question that they know the answer to.
All the time, yes.
And you can tell that they know simply from the attitude in which they're writing it, but they'll ask a question they know the answer to. Why? Simply because they want you to tell it to them, right? They want confirmation. They don't want to risk and step out on a limb, and accept the responsibility of, I made the call and then I made the mistake, right? If they're going to be wrong. So they can instead say, oh, well, Thorin said to do it, so, that's his fault. I shouldn't have listened to him. When all along, they knew what the answer is. They just didn't want to, they wanted to absolve their responsibility. But your intuition always knows.
Yes.
And you've got to trust it. That's genuinely the scariest thing. You've got to trust it, even when it doesn't make sense, even when there is zero logical reasoning behind it. You have to trust that it's coming from a place that will always be your best friend, and that has taken in everything that you're not aware of. So the more you use it, the stronger it gets, and the better you can operate off of it, and you can achieve amazing, amazing things with it. Recently, I was listening to a lecture from Manly P. Hall, who's one of the greatest esoteric writers of the last 100 years, maybe ever. He had a lecture on how to improve the faculty of intuition. And he said something very interesting that was the most important ingredient in developing your intuition is honesty, and being honest with yourself mainly, right? Because if you're not seeing things clearly for what they are, right, you're kind of programming yourself to take things in inputs that are just complete illusions, right? You need to objectively view everything not as you wish them to be, but as they actually are, so that your subconscious can actually learn, okay, this is actually this is actually that.
By the way, that's actually a much more subtle point than maybe someone listening might realize. Because as you said, you perfectly nailed it. It's not like people might naively think, well, if I talk to myself, of course I'm being honest. Like, no, bro, we all lie to ourselves. Like, one of the main things I discovered myself through this method of learning intuition is, before you listen to it, the little voice of Corp pops up in your head and it tells you, like, well, like you like to smoke weed, so of course there can't be anything wrong with that. And besides, there's other drugs that way. You just do that thing, you don't really listen to yourself. Well, what is my experience of it? Do I like, it's like you actually, there's almost like other voices will get in the way if you're not listening carefully, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, they absolutely will. It's imperative. Absolutely imperative.
By the way, one thing along these lines as well is, I know this will sound weird because people will again think this is just woo-woo and essentially it's like echo chamber thought, but another conclusion of listening to intuition is, no joke, it has made me have the most perfect conscience imaginable, mate. It's not like I never do anything wrong, but as long as I feel like I was doing it for the right reasons and it was like what almost like was speaking to me, I can always go to bed and I'm never kept up with thoughts. I'll say this abstractly, but people know what I'm referring to. Even when it comes to the obvious area people refuse to listen to their intuition, mate, which is things like health, their environment, medicine, etc. They all want to outsource it. They want to just get the guy in the white coat and go, right, he has a degree, he knows better than me, leave it with him, right? Here's what's weird, mate. I've come to the perspective where I've flipped it. Even if I actually died due to the choices I made, debatably, whether that was, the reason I died and I should have done X, Y, and Z. I would actually, I know it sounds mad and I can't really know it until I'm in the situation, but I feel like I would be okay with it, mate. I know it sounds mad, but I would sort of just be like, that's okay, because the same intuition brought me all the great things in my life, brought me to this point, and I don't even know whether I would be totally wrong. Like, maybe everyone was going to die in some way, and that just happens to be the one I picked. That was the path I chose, right? Could have been a different way, because to me, even when you outsource it to the guy, you're still making a decision. You just essentially saying, you make the decision for me, right? Like, as fucked up as it is, I can live with the outputs of my decisions over, even if it in theory was better, the outputs of just blindly trusting someone else. Do you have a sense like that?
Yes. There is nothing more valuable in the world than a clean conscience, right? Being able to go to sleep easy at night. If you genuinely live your life in such a way where even if it's misinterpreted, but by your own reasoning, you are doing the best by people, you're not sneaking anyone, you're not cheating anyone, you are genuinely treating people in the way that you wish to be treated and at the best way that you possibly can with the information you have at the time, you're going to have a very, very light conscience, right? And you're always going to be protected by the feeling of, even if at your deathbed you're reflecting on your life, you wouldn't change a thing because you did it as honest, with as pure intention as possible, and no one can take that away from you.
Yes. I mean, I would even go as far as to say, when it comes to things like that, like genuinely, even if it is something as extreme as health or whatever else, like I really can just think to myself, like I said, I can take it back to what I said before. It just made sense to me. This is what made sense to me. And even if, as you're saying, sometimes it's not even like you actually have tangible evidence for it. It's a vibe. It's a feeling. There's a leap of faith element. Like, all I'll say is when I follow that, in the long run, it never guides me wrong, mate. I might have certain times I've fail, etc., but even then I'll tie it into the narrative building element. I feel like those were lessons I had to learn to get to where I wanted to go. Like, I love that. Even though people think it's cheesy, this is how my mentality's changed over the last years. I used to think those stories that like Christians will tell, the classic one where the guy's like, he's lost at sea and he's like, God, please, save me. Like, I believe in you now. And then like, a boat comes and he goes like, oh no, it's okay. God's coming for me later. And then like a guy in a dinghy comes and he goes, it's okay. God's coming. And then the joke is, he dies and he goes to heaven and he says to God, like, what the fuck? I asked him to rescue me. And God goes, bro, I sent a boat, I sent a dinghy. Like, what more do you want? Like, the point was he wasn't willing to see it in that way. As mad as it is, I almost feel like even the mistakes I make, if I follow my intuition, what I actually find is that was the lesson I needed to get to the success I need later. I just couldn't have gone from 0 to 100, as it were. I almost had to go through this experience of fucking this up, meeting the wrong person that I don't want to be, it's like in a fucked up way, I can always turn it back on itself and it's always leading me towards where I want to be.
Oh, that's exactly right. I love, Kanye has a lyric, right, where he goes man, it's not even coming to mind, but the Bible, it's actually a Bible verse, and it goes to him who, much is required.
Yes.
Right? And I took that and I meditated on it, and it's just like, what a mind-blowing idea where, okay, let's say you ask God for a massive position. You want a huge station in life.
Yes.
How do you think you're going to get it? Right? You're only going to get it by going through the things that create that type of person. Right? So you ask for a big position, you're going to get a big test. Okay? From who much is given, much is tested. Okay, so you got to realize it's almost a curse that the higher you aim, the higher you want to achieve, the higher you want to go, the more that's going to be required of you, the more that you're going to need to go through to actually gain the strength to go through that, right? So the way that me and my best friend always look at, and this is again part of the alchemizing of every situation, right? The silver lining. The way that we look at it, all the hardship that we've been through is preparation. Okay, we have faith in God and faith in the future that the things that we are going through, that's what's going to be giving us the very necessary ingredients in character that we need to finally surpass and to fulfill the part that God wants for our lives, right? So that's the way we look at it, and that's something people have to be okay with. It's ultimately going to be that you want to become a really sharp sword, right? You're going to need to get whetted against a very difficult and tough stone, right? So a way I like to phrase this is Miyamoto Musashi, who was a Japanese swordsman many hundreds of years ago, one of the best ever, won 60 to the death samurai duels. He put this amazingly, right? He said that, he went to the temple and he would only pray 2 prayers. His first prayer would be, please protect my sister from harm. And the second prayer would be, please test the lowly Musashi with hardship. Let him become the greatest swordsman in the land, or let him die.
Yes.
Right? Like he literally would sit and pray, please test me. bring me the events and circumstances and people that are going to require the absolute best of me, right? The only way you get stronger is by lifting heavy weight.
Yes.
So if you ask for something in which you're going to need to be very strong, you're going to need to be handling some very difficult weights. Okay? They're only there to bolster you, to make you into that person necessary to be able to go and achieve those things. And that's something a lot of people miss, right? They want just the easy way. They want just click their fingers and then just magically be equipped. It's like, no, the only way you're going to get there, the only way you're going to forge that strong of a soul is by actually going through those experiences that force you to become that type of person.
I'll even give like a very simple example to call back to something we talked about earlier. If you were to say to someone something as simple as like, you know, I like to use magnesium supplements. I find it helps me sleep at night and, you know, reduces like whatever, like nerve pain or something. You could pick sort of random thing, right? If you were to say that, as you say, there will always be the person like, yeah, but what exact brand of the magnesium should I take? And should it be citrate? And then if I do it, like, do I do 2 pills? Do I do it an hour before bed or 2? It's like, bro, what you're missing there is, even if I told you that like the right answer for you, which is probably going to be different for me, even if I told you, how does that ever help you progress? You're going to have to come right back to me for the next thing. Whereas what you find when you look into those areas and you do it by trial and error is in actually trying all the different types of magnesium or trying the first one you find and then find it's not as good and then looking online and comparing and going, wow's my experience different? Or what happens if I take it with food or not? You're actually going to learn how magnesium functions and what it does in the body and, you know, why maybe you needed it in the first place or maybe you don't need it. You know what I mean? Like, essentially the function is going to come out of the experience of figuring the shit out yourself. At the end, you won't need me or you. You'll be ready.
That's exactly right. You know? People are too afraid of taking the risks necessary to become a scientist.
For sure.
Right? They're not willing to just go through the world and forge their own personal philosophy. They want one given to them, spoon-fed. They want mummy to take the spoon and go, yeah. Here comes the airplane. Right? I am adamant against telling people specific answers. Like, I will even say, if somebody asks me something on Twitter, something that they should go and be a scientist about, right, to find the answer, I will literally say, nobody tell this guy the answer. Yep. Make him go and try it himself. Yes. Nobody say, if you tell him the answer, I'm going to block you. You're going to be kicked out of the cool club, right? Nobody tell him, mate, you're going to go and find it yourself, right? Yes. Like, that resourcefulness is one of the most valuable traits a person can possibly develop because it's going to serve you for your whole life long, rather than only being able to do the things that people have the exact answer for you ready on a plate to go. So I really am super passionate about instilling that type of intellectual independence. And mate, why don't you just go and spend 5 minutes on researching it instead of just asking me? How about you just try it experientially for yourself, right? Because like you just said, even if I give you the answer, it might not be the answer for you, okay?
Yes.
The only way that most people are going to learn what works best with their specific body or their specific situation is to actually try and to see how their body reacts to that specific situation. So look, if it's not going to kill you, try it.
Yeah, I mean, I would even say it's why I do describe when I try to drop like a little piece of wisdom, I just describe it as a breadcrumb. The point is, like, it's not, people think it's just because, you know, I have a job online and you can't say certain things. That's just a healthy byproduct, mate. Like, the main reason I only drop the breadcrumb is because if you are the kind of person who was ever going to benefit from the end conclusion of going through this process, thinking about this thing, undergoing this technique, then you're going to have to do it. Like, I don't want to rob you of that. Like I said before, when I used the analogy of the movie ending, I wouldn't want to tell you the ending to an awesome movie to convince you to watch the movie. One, I'm not trying to convince you to watch anything. Watch whatever you want, mate. And then secondly, if you're going to watch it, you're going to enjoy it way more if you don't know the ending. How about I just give you, because I always think this, I'll give you the reverse version of it. Instead of giving everyone the secrets to convince them and then show that you're right, I've always found the best way you can help someone get into like a band, a book, an author, a movie, a director is you don't even hype it. What you do is you just explain what you took from it that was awesome. Like, oh, I just love the way you like made the character dialogue. Dude, when people start talking like that, even for a movie you've already seen that you know you don't like, you vibe with how they're talking about it. You're like, oh, this is interesting. I love hearing people talk about what they're passionate about, what they like, what their process was. Like, I feel like that's so much more valuable than actually, you know, the answer. It's like, that's why I use the Zen koan example, mate. If you actually were to give them a book with all the answers, it wouldn't be, there'd be no value to it. You know what I mean? Like, what would they get out of it? You know?
That's exactly right. That's such a good way to frame it. It's like a Zen koan.
Because you'd just be fucking them if you tell them what you think the answer is at the end, you know?
Yeah. And you know what I think it comes from? I think it honestly comes from, in childhood, parents criticizing mistakes, right?
Okay.
So that's the main thing that people are afraid of, making mistakes. So something, I don't have kids yet, but when I do, I'll be absolutely sure to never punish them, to never make them afraid of making mistakes. Because I think it was Ray Dalio. He said, if you failed, good. A good thing. It's the beginning of a discovery process, right? So then you look at that and you take that failure and you think, what can I learn from this, right? So a lot of people, this whole, asking for somebody, the questions you already know, because you just want someone else to take the blame. A lot of this stuff, a lot of the errors that we make in life are from wanting to avoid making mistakes. That's why we hesitate. That's why we don't take action. That's why we don't try, because we're afraid of making a mistake. We're afraid of falling flat on our faces. And that's just something that terrifies people to their core. So what do? They instead say, hey, how much do I take? How many hours from bedtime? Blah, blah, blah. The whole rest of it. Okay. So it's really the whole be a scientist. It's really a process of relearning that it's okay to make mistakes. And that's actually the purest form of learning.
One thing as well, this actually ties in, obviously I know that you have the interest in Robert Anton Wilson. One thing I took from his work that I have found very powerful, and I've noticed it looks like a lot of like very creative thinkers had this same experience, is you look in life for when you have synchronicities, things that just match up, like seemingly by coincidence. And all I'll say, even though again, I understand that the person who thinks we're out there has already just left us behind miles before, I don't think it's confirmation bias, mate. Like for real, there's like a meaningful pattern or story when I pay attention to these. Like I think for real, not just people, like I said before, but I will just have books that just come my way, mate. Like I'll have a book I've had for 10 years I just never read. And one day I think based on nothing, I'll go, what's that? I'll check it up. And you know exactly where I'm going. I'll open like random page. It'll be literally what I've been recently thinking about the last week. Yes. And I'll be like, shit, was I supposed to read this now? And similarly, recommendations for books will then come in from a friend of mine or someone. And again, not without me prompting them. I'm not going, by the way, I'm into this at the moment. So have you got anything like that? They'll just for some reason bring it up that one time in a way they've never done before. Do you have this experience?
Absolutely. Yes. Look, synchronicity, as Jung defined it, was a meaningful coincidence of two or more events where I think it goes something other than probability of chance is involved. Right. So basically, two very distant things that just occur like within a similar time frame that just make you go, hang on a second, that's a bit weird. Like I'll give you an example. It's like something that's literally happened to me is Marge Simpson, right?
Okay.
I was calling my mom on the phone, and we were just talking, and she happened to mention Marge Simpson or something like that, right? Then the next hour, I'll be on Twitter, and then I'll get a random DM from somebody I've never spoken to, and they're talking to me about Marge Simpson, like something as ridiculous as that, okay, where never in a million years could that just be normal coincidence, and this happens all the time. So whenever this happens, again, this is going to trail off for people who think woo-woo, but that is a complete sign. It's a wink. It is a nudge from whatever you want to believe in. If it's something, if it's from source, if it's from God, it's from the universe. Don't you think you should pay attention to that kind of thing? It's just these things that are so massively separated that couldn't possibly occur within a similar time frame that you have to look at. There's something going on there.
Yes. Oh, the other thing is as well, to me, I don't think people, this is another area of like being a human in the world that I don't think people have examined, because they do just think of themselves as like some siloed element that's totally individuated from humanity and consciousness, and that they're just like in a meat robot or whatever walking around. Whereas to me, the reason that there has to be more in some level is because another thing is like, I find that like vibe is, it feels like in real life, it commands like 90% of how situations play out, not what you say, not what you were thinking, not what you look like, etc. Like a very simple example I'll give you is this. I see people all the time complain about things like, you go out on the street, like I'm sure in Australia, wherever you're from, it's similar. You get like the charity person on the main shopping street who comes up like, hey, can I talk to you for a moment? And you see the way they're stood, you see everything tells you this guy's going to try for 10 minutes to hard sell me some charity shit, right? Or the classic one is they call you, similar thing, some annoying person call. His Here's the reason why I never get mad at that for 1 second, dude. Because the second they approach me, my vibe is just go, I'm not interested, thanks. And I just walk on. Dude, they don't try to come after me. They don't try and say a second line. It's not even what I said. My vibe just tells them this guy's he's not receptive. He's not into it. Like, he's not open to it at all. It's not even worth me wasting my time. In fact, he's sort of done me a favor because rather than give him the spiel, I know he's just not into it. So I'm going to go to the next person. And same thing when I just say, sorry, I'm not interested in this at the moment. See you, dude. It's just... These things, both for negative and positive, they just take care of themselves if you listen to your sort of intuition, in my opinion.
Yes, there's a great book by Roger Ailes, who he founded Fox. It's called "You Are the Message," and in it, it's about communication. And one of the points in there is he was talking to somebody who I think it was a kid who pickpockets on the train or on public transport, and he says to him, "Look, I bet you there's a certain type of things that you look for. Is that right?" It's like, yeah, that's absolutely right. It's like, can you explain it to me? And the pickpocket would explain that he can tell just by looking at someone whether they're a mark or not, whether they can get away with messing about with them or not. So this is something that everybody's constantly exuding, just loads and loads of nonverbal information of whether you're a sucker or not. So same thing, these guys trying to hassle you for charity. They can tell, oh, okay, this guy's not going to go for it because there's things that you are doing with your face, with the way you're looking out, with the way you're walking, the pace you're walking, the direction your body is to them. They can intuitively tell, hey, this guy's not going to be receptive to it. I'm going to be wasting my time if I talk to him. So it's the same thing with the mugger, or people like that. A guy knows who he can and cannot mug. He's not going to try with something that he cannot absolutely be successful with.
Yes.
Because it's very risky, right? Same with the pickpocket, he knows. So, oh, that guy's not paying attention. Oh, he's looking at his phone. He's very distracted. He's got his headphones in. You're constantly giving out these signals, and people's neurology are reading that within microseconds.
Yes. I mean, I'll even say as well, this might sound slightly controversial, but one of the areas that I've noticed this in life as well, that like the vibe is detected by other people, whether consciously or unconsciously, like you say, is when I was younger, I'll tell you straight up, I used to be someone who was a bit of a wimp. Like I didn't stand up for myself. I didn't have the same sort of sense of who I am. I definitely would never sort of be aggressive if people sort of stepped over my boundaries. And so you can imagine, I was the default person that someone would try and fuck with or be mean to. Or like, put it this way, if I even used to walk down the street, I lived in quite a rough area in the UK. I've told this story before. If I just tried to return a video cassette, mate, people would just try and start fights with me as I was walking down the street. It sounds crazy. I've never seen them. I never met them. But what happened was they were sensing from my vibe, like you're saying, like this person's an easy target. This person, looked away from me quickly when I looked at them. They look like they're not sure about themselves. Like, oh, wait a minute, he's not from this area. Maybe he doesn't know anyone. They were calculating all this stuff unconsciously. And then in the moment, something told them intuitively, this is the person you can fuck with. But what's crazy is I noticed years later when I figured out who I am, I found my voice, I got an inner confidence, I won't stand for any bullshit. Dude, part of you is almost like, let's see them try it now. Dude, no one ever comes up ever to me like that, ever, on any circumstance. Even when I see the rough kids in a gang and I'm the one on my own walking, magically, mate, they don't say anything to me. If anything, the joke is they might even look at me like nod or something, like, you know what I mean? Like, I'm not even vibing with them, but they almost like get, like, that's not the person to fuck with. Like, there'll be another person. There almost is like a predator-prey thing like that where it's more than just, they're not just randomly decide I'm going to be antisocial to person X. Now, the reason I say it's slightly controversial is people are going to get the vibe, and I'm intentionally saying this, that on some level, you're attracting that energy when you have a certain energetic state yourself, when you have a certain mindset yourself, when you're giving off certain signals. Like, unfortunately, in a way, that's why I give the example of the predator, the prey. In a way, you are signaling to the hawk that you're the rabbit, if you know what I mean. Like, it sort of knows this is the person I'm allowed to fuck with.
That's exactly it. Yes. Oh man, this is from Jocko Willink, right? Ex-Navy SEAL. He gave this really good piece of advice where the major things you do to not signal yourself as this kind of prey. Right. There's two things that if you do, like massively decreases the chance that somebody's going to try and mess with you. There's these two things. Number one, your head's on a swivel, right? You're actually taking an awareness of your surroundings, and people are noting that. People can actually see that you're being observant. And number two, it's eye contact with everybody, right? Now, if you just quickly look at someone, it doesn't have to be long. It doesn't have to be a challenging stare, but just your eyes meeting with theirs lets you know, hey, we're on the same level. I'm not averting your gaze because I'm not afraid of you. I see you and I'm aware of your presence, right? If you think to these guys that they're going to get mugged, right? These people are looking for their targets. They're going to pick the person who's a bit of a pussy, right?
Yep.
Who gave them that little bit of 1 second eye contact, oh, quickly darted away, right? It's these things that people do that let others know, hey, I'm a target. You can mess with me, no problem.
Yes. I'd even say as well, like people would be shocked by, essentially, like I said, you can even, if you do this right, if you change your mindset and the way you interact with the world, you can even form an attractive relationship to people you wouldn't like, but that will help you as a result. Like I'll give you a crazy example. So within my particular field, I've had a bunch of scenarios where, like I'll give you two quick examples. I can even say the names here. People wouldn't care, but they'll know what I'm referencing. But if you don't know esports, don't worry about it. Essentially, there are two massive companies. One is the company that made the game League of Legends, Riot Games. And if people know, the way they operate within esports is they're incredibly controlling. Like, I'm not even exaggerating when I say they're sort of like the Scientology of esports. Like, you not only can't criticize them, you wouldn't even think of criticizing them because they're so like going to use all their material power to destroy you, suppress you, shut you down. Yeah, they're going to just wreck you. Like, they're going to kind of completely destroy you, right? But because I was always positioned that I was in an independent position where I didn't work for the companies that they had the influence over, I was one of the few people who for years could be the one who sort of stood out and said, this is bullshit. They're doing this wrong. Fuck them. Like, this is nonsense. They're all corrupt. Well, here's the crazy thing, right? If you ask a random person listening who doesn't know what we're talking about with mindset, what response do you think Thorin got? They're going to think, right, well, you would be public enemy number one. They'll be constantly fucking with you. They'll shut down everything. No, mate. It's the opposite. It is literally the opposite. And here's what I learned is people like them who only see the world through the lens of power, they respect power. It's the one thing they actually believe in. So what's crazy is when you sort of push back and you show you can't make me do this, you can't do it. Dude, they start to actually, their brain, remember, none of these people are morons if they have positions of power and influence. They figured something out about the world. So they then start actually, believe it or not, trying to negotiate with you, mate. Like I would have people, this happened to me. Someone from Riot Games, for real, back-channeled through like an after party, an event, and basically told me, if you can just like agree not to criticize the company for a couple of years, like we'll actually let you work our world championship, which by the way, he didn't know I had no interest in doing, but that's what they thought. What they thought was like, right, there's got to be a way. Essentially, whereas their normal position was they're the mafia boss and then they wreck you with fear and intimidation. Because I sort of showed it didn't work on me, they became the sweethearts, as it were. You know, suddenly they were like, oh, is there any way we could do this? And that can happen. Like, because I know it sounds wild because it's an example where I didn't want to take advantage. Similar thing, right? I criticized a lot of other people in the different parts of esports. And this is not a joke. A group of people who literally would have been considered my enemies for years got together. It's another deal I didn't take with literally the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia and raised millions of dollars they wanted to buy into my company for. Again, you know, hoping eventually they'd have influence and control. Of course, all that, you know, down the line. But the crazy point I'm making here is I don't think people understand, like, not only are people reacting to you in a negative way when you're down on yourself, but when you sort of adopt this positivity, and especially I think a part of it's like it's that they sort of respect that you have boundaries, you're sure of who you are, and you won't accept certain things. And in my particular case, I often did actually use, like, I take it from that classic movie, The Untouchables. You know, the whole thing of, like, you know, they put your man in the hospital, you put one of theirs in the cemetery. I do that, mate. Like, if you fuck with me, what I try to teach you is this. I don't care if you hit me more. I'm going to go 10 times harder at you. So the choice is, do you want to do it again and I'll go 20 times harder? Or do you want to just eventually go, maybe we can get a truce here? You know what I mean? That's the kind of vibe I put off to my enemies. Because what I always have this great line, I'm totally willing to accept surrender. We can do a truce. But you've got to give something up to do that, obviously. You know, that's the vibe I want with my enemies. It's like, how far do you want to take this?
Yeah. Yeah, you make there be extreme consequences with messing with you. You know, it's something that everybody, it doesn't matter if they like you, if you're saying good things about them, or if they hate you, you're saying bad things about them. Universally, the one thing that everybody respects is balls.
Oh, for sure. Yes. You know, by the way, that's even one thing I feel like you can tell how feminized discourse has become online. Because you know this thing, I'll give you the obvious example, mate, but I won't say the name. You know a very famous politician who's really good at sort of comedic relief, as it were? Dude, you can just like him for that alone. He's fucking killing the game in that respect.
Even if you completely disagree on
but that's the point. If you dare to say that, people lose their mind, don't they? They can't handle the idea that, look, surely as men we can all respect someone who at least says what they think or does a fucking cheeky raz every now and then, you know. Like,
exactly.
As a man, you can respect that, right? You don't have to vibe with anything else about the guy or what he says, you know.
Even if you think he's a complete dickhead, you know, you can at least say, well, you know, on some level, I respect that. You know, that's I can understand that.
It's like what you said earlier, mate. Look, I also do enjoy Kanye's work a lot, but even if I didn't, that's the angle alone I'd be into. Like I remember first hearing that interview he did years ago. Everyone will know this one from like 10 plus years ago. That Zane Lowe one where he said that line, like, "If you're a fan of me, you're a fan of yourself" or something. Dude, I fuck with that line heavy. I wouldn't have to care about a single song he did, and that'd be a mega line. You know what I mean? That's instantly attractive.
Yeah, it goes back to that Bruce Lee thing, right?
Absolutely. Here's a question for you then. Where do you think this goes? Is just having social media and having a little bit of notoriety in a niche way, is this just like a fun blip along the way, a stop on the journey? Do you think it ever becomes something? Like, you someone in the future, would you like to write a book or do some essays or have a course? What's your vision for what you might do with this? Is there anything?
Oh, man. You know, there is, and I kind of don't want to reveal it. But currently, this is a very small plan, part of a long-range, 20-plus year plan. So, you know, stay in touch.
What about this then? I'll spin it this way. I'll ask it this way. What would you say? What are the big conclusions that you've learned from being an online personality or having this access to people? Because one thing I always think's cool, by the way, that I always say, I don't ever bitch about how Twitter like suppresses stuff. Mate, they still let you us all on the platform to sell this shit. Like I'm saying wild shit abstractly. Like I always give this example. It's like I'm in a mafia bar. Look, I'm well aware the one thing I can't say is the mafia run this place and they're dickheads. Like I understand what's off limits. It's just cool they let me in here to have a convo. You know what I mean?
Look, people complain about getting banned and they go, oh, look, you know, I got banned, Twitter, blah, 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 free speech. Like, bro, you actually broke the terms of service.
Yes.
Like, there's some rules here. You don't go to someone's house and, you know, they explicitly say, you know, these are the expectations we have while you're here. You know, it's their house. It's their rules. Yep. It's not that difficult to obey them, right? And it's not even, they don't even ask of much. I mean, especially now with Elon taking over the platform, there's not much you can't say. Right? They've changed it to now it's just going to it's going to circulate a little less. But by and large, there's no reason why you can't, you know, adhere to the basic terms of service. And it's very hard to get banned now. You have to really go out of your way to specifically violate the rules to actually do something. It's just something way too many people complain about.
That's also another thing as well, I would say, mate, is there's another reason why even if I did think that telling all secrets was the right way, and like, if you notice, that's not my tip at all, mate. It's why even though I'm interested in conspiracies and stuff, I'm definitely not part of like the movement of people who think, you've got to wake the whole world up to this, like, bro, like, first of all, they're not into this shit. And then secondly, it would be like just handing a machine gun to a kid who has no training whatsoever. Like it would destroy them if you gave them some of this info now. Like they're better off just learning at their own pace, if it makes sense for them. Like you actually don't want to wake everyone up or whatever the fuck that terminology means. Like what you want to do is wake yourself up and then sort of lay the breadcrumbs for the like-minded people. Because I would even say, like, to go beyond that, yeah, I don't think of any of the stuff online as like, I'm trying to win people over, like I've got to get like the most people to listen. That's almost antithetical to my style. It's more like if you vibe with me, you vibe with me. It's going to figure itself out. Do you have a similar vibe? Do you feel like that? Like I say, what conclusions would you say you've taken from your experience?
Could you just repeat that last 20 seconds again?
Yeah, like
you took me on a few trails.
Yeah, sure. Basically, I'm just saying, like, when I do that, I'm never trying to convince people. Like, I even say this, dude, I don't do debates. I think debates in the modern day are just stupid, like, public arguments where neither person had any interest in listening to what the other person's saying. They're just trying to, like, score points or whatever. I do discussions. I love the discussion, mate. I love it if we talk. We could totally disagree, but as long as we get a chance to lay it all out, ask questions, you know, play with the premise. So I'm never trying to convince people. I'm not trying to win everyone up. I'm trying to have the most people agree with me. I just want to put my shit out in the world. And if you're attracted to it and you vibe with it, it'll figure itself out, as it were.
Yeah, I think the best thing that symbolizes this, I love this point so much, I'm huge about it, is astrology, right? So I can prove beyond a shadow of a doubt it's really real to people, right? And so occasionally I'll talk about it. I'll say, oh, yeah, well, you see this, that, blah, 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 astrology. and I'll get some random to come in and be like, you think astrology is real?
Sure.
And it's like, bro, listen. I am not going to expend 1 ounce of effort in trying to convince you. If you don't want to believe in it, cool. I'm completely okay with that. But the fact of the matter is, the people who run the show, the people who control the world, they rely on this.
Absolutely.
They're obsessed with it.
Yes.
So you're going to come along and tell me, oh, bro, it's not real? Let's just look at who's being the most effective, right? JP Morgan said, millionaires don't use astrology. Billionaires do. Basically saying, anybody can hustle their way up into $1 million. But to become a billionaire in today's age, there's only about 2,500 of them worldwide. If you're going to be there, it's almost got to be a miracle. All right. So they are the type of people that are relying on every little advantage possible to ensure their success. And so they're paying attention to astrology. There's got to be something to it, right? JP Morgan of himself, one of the richest men of all time.
Yeah, I would even say on that topic, mate, I even think that's another area that the way we're socially programmed is so clever. Like, if you notice, by the way, it's like we said earlier, I don't have to agree with it. I think some of the people doing it are evil, but I can certainly marvel at the way they've done it. Because there's another reason I know there are certain psyops within the conspiracy world, mate, because they can't keep coming to the conclusion that all these people are morons and they're all tripping up and they're accidentally leaking stuff. It's like, bro, like the joke is they've tricked you into thinking that the second matrix is you're outside of the matrix in that analogy, like you're a guy who just doesn't realize that's a different narrative being given to you to empower you to not have to do anything because they're all idiots and you're going to succeed anyway. Like, I actually think the way the system's put together is very clever. It looks very tailored and precise, and they definitely know through all those think tanks how people are going to respond and how to make one piece of information make two people have a different response, but both are the response you want. Because along the lines of what you're saying about astrology, there's a classic one. Immediately, the majority of men who've never read a single book on the topic, they've never known a single person, they just think of movies where they see a scam and they think, oh, it's what silly women think who just don't know logic and reason, and they can't even access that world. A whole way of thinking, all that we've been discussing in this interview about intuition and fact, it's all locked off to them at that point in time because they think to themselves, it's not what men are about. And so I'm a man, so that's not for me. Women have the same thing. Women are told to think stupid things like all of history was just patriarchy and men being also, so they don't do things like study military history or figure out things. You know what I mean? It's like a way to trick us all into shutting ourselves off to the world, I think.
Oh, you did such a good job at explaining that. Yeah. The piece of advice I offer to people, specifically with astrology and believing it, right, is I say, look, understand some very, very high level people have used this and do use this. So I want you to pay attention at who actually is benefiting, right? And where your idea of this, where your preconceptions have actually arisen from. Most likely, it's going to be some girl who's some bimbo who's just going to, outsource her personal problems on the fact of, oh, well, it's because I'm a Taurus, right?
Yes.
That's the extent of most people's that they've engaged with astrology or they've seen it, right?
Yep.
So of course they're going to have an immediate negative bias towards it, like that rubbish. I've just seen Melanie use it for an example of why her life's in shambles, right?
Yes,
or things like this. But that's why I encourage them. I awareness, all right. I say, look, don't allow these few poor ambassadors of the topic completely, dilute your perspective on this. And let's actually take a reasonable, sensible approach and see how this actually works, right? So one of the things I do, Thorin, right, you're saying breadcrumbs. Yeah. If they can come to the conclusion on their own, that is going to be something that they can believe massively because they've arrived to it themselves, right? It's part of the value of being a scientist. So one of the things I actually like to do is I like to tweet out, I like to inform people of astrological events without actually informing them of the astrological events. And it's only later that I'll say, by the way, this was astrology. Okay, so one of the classic things I like to do with this, and this is one of my favorites, is this is actually what won me over into believing astrology. Okay, so 3 times a year, the planet Mercury, it orbits in such a way where there's an optical illusion in which if you look at it, it looks like it's going backwards. All right, it does this little dance. In that period, it happens 3 times a year. It's called Mercury retrograde, right? Now, during Mercury retrograde, Mercury is the planet of communication, of writing, of relationships, right? Of speaking, right? All these things. So when Mercury appears that it goes backwards, we know that during this period, there's going to be mix-ups of communication and there's going to be strains on relationships, okay? So that happens 3 times a year. It's a thing where it's guaranteed. So what I would do is, when I'm learning about this and still very skeptical, I'm going, is this real? Is this not? I would pay attention and I would literally take Mercury retrograde. I would know in my head, okay, this is a part where, people have a few more disagreements, a bit more arguments, there's a bit more misunderstandings between what people are saying. I'm going to just hold this in mind and not even inform anybody, not front load their brain to act towards it. I'm just going to see, to the best of my ability, if I can actually notice an increase of disagreements, miscommunications, etc., right? And without fail, I would see it among my friends, around my family,
right?
So around everybody who's around me. During these periods, it would be extremely tense. There'd just be complete, no, that's not what they said. This is what they said. And I would be shocked. I go, okay, that's amazing. But maybe it was just one off. Maybe it was just my brain looking for confirmation bias. Let me have a look multiple times before I really form an opinion on this. And so I went through the second Mercury retrograde, the third, and consistently each single time I would notice there's a specific raising in which people would have more disagreements, more misunderstandings between what they say. People would need to be, more careful in their relationships. People would be a lot more sensitive. These sorts of things to a point where I couldn't deny it. So what I'll do to leave these breadcrumbs is, one of the things that is very famous during Mercury retrogrades is that your exes will contact you.
Oh, okay.
It's a strange phenomenon. So what I would say to leave the breadcrumbs and not to make people, immediately go, astrology, right? I would tweet out, gentlemen, pay attention from this date till this date. If your ex contacts you, understand this is a test from the universe. They're trying to reel you back into old patterns. Do not fall for it, okay? I'm telling you. And
now I see why you often get those responses where people just think you're psychic.
Right. And I would be inundated.
Right.
Inundated with people going, whoa, how did you know? What the heck? My ex hasn't contacted me in 3 years and now she just did, like right when you said, right? And it's because it's an actual thing. And then I only later inform them, by the way, the reason that I knew that was because of astrology. There you go. It's proof. Yes. It's actually real. So that's the way that you can breadcrumb them in and rather than, have them just clouded by their preconceived notion of what they've been exposed to from it. Like, oh yeah, I'm a Pisces, right? Like all this sort of stuff. You can actually show them, hang on, bro, things operate on cycles. We've been here long enough to know what they mean. And we can actually interpret what might happen.
Yeah, I would even say on that topic, like the best analogy I could give someone if they've never thought about this topic seriously, they've just dismissed it, would be essentially once upon a time, things like how you plant crops and when you harvest them, that itself was astrology. Like now you're going to think, no, it's science that, you've studied, like, when things are in a certain way in the environment. Yeah, that's what we're talking about. That's literally what he just described right there. He just pointed out that, he just pointed out that if you didn't already formally get told it by a scientist, you would just dismiss it. And you think that's how it works. So essentially think of the same concept, but for everything in life. Like, for example, as you say, there's a reason why the super rich people are obsessed with this. They understand that just like with planting like real crops, you don't just plant willy-nilly, you plant in the time of when you plant, and then certain crops go in at certain times, and then certain ones have a longer yield period, and then you have to set up the thing in real life then you want this. So if people don't know, this is how they start businesses, how they close down sectors, how they have crises in certain areas, how there's times of abundance. Like, it's not that they're controlling every element, they're sort of going with the flow. It's just they know what the flow is, and if you're a random pleb, you think every day is the same, and essentially, to use the analogy, you're a guy who's trying to be a farmer with no knowledge of the seasons, and you're just planting willy-nilly in winter and going, what the hell, I'm not getting anything, like it's nothing happening, like you're the guy who doesn't get it,
Yes, that's 100% it. I think of Ronald Reagan, JP Morgan, even Winston Churchill. These people, they all had personal astrologers because they're wise enough to understand, hang on, just like the weather, everything happens in cycles and seasons, if I want to fly a kite, it's probably best that if I look at the weather, I choose a windy day, right?
Yes.
So they're always picking the best conditions for, to launch their plans, to launch their campaigns, everything like this. It's really, it takes a level of humility to recognize that. But the way I describe it is it's cosmic weather. People say, is it like witchcraft? No, it's cosmic weather that has an effect on our world and on our psychology that we've known for a long time.
Yeah, the thing is as well, like we've discussed in this call, I don't worry about the reply guys, mate. So I don't mind the guy like, oh, so you think this distant body is having an effect on it? It's like, nope, none of that. First of all, I don't need to think any of that. That's a model you just put in my face and also just believes true. And I have to interpret everything through that lens. But more importantly, here's the thing, I actually notice with things that work, like I do think there is like something of a mystical element. I even think part of the uncertainty of the fact you can't know is part of why it works. Essentially, it's kind of a placebo effect type thing. But I also do think you could even just make it a secular if you want. Like the obvious way I would explain it would be this. For thousands of years, some of the smartest humans who ever lived assigned archetypal values and relationships between external things you could observe. So then they could see when these things interacted externally. How do the archetypes interact in that way? And this is essentially just a symbology for them to explain your internal landscape. Like to me, you're missing the point if you do that thing of like, yeah, but why would Mercury, which is a distant planet, like you're lost on some comic book shit there, mate. You're not listening to what we're saying. We're talking about a bigger principle than the literal planet Mercury, right?
Oh, you nailed it, Thorin. That's absolutely precise.
Because to tie it into the hypnosis angle, another thing I want to ask you about was this. I actually do think that there is an enormous amount, as much as this will sound mega woo-woo, there's an enormous amount of what even reality is that is based on how your mind works. Because I'll give you a crazy example that I think it's the most sleeper example of all time, dude. You know when people hear the famous story of the placebo effect? So they hear, right, you get these two groups. You get the control group, which doesn't have the drug, and then you get the one that's given the drug, and then you won't believe it, but in the control group who didn't have the drug, because they didn't know they didn't have the drug, some of them actually got better in the way that they would have if they'd have taken the drug, right? The conclusions from that are infuriating, dude, because one conclusion is, so basically magically it worked for them, but that actually means nothing because we didn't give them the drug, so ignore that. And then the other one, and this is the craziest of all, is people don't actually think about what it implies about the group that got the drug, dude. It actually implies some of them might have gotten better not because of the drug. They also might be having the placebo effect. In fact, I'll go one further. It seems like the placebo effect is actually part of how these things work. There's actually a mental component as well,
Yes. I absolutely love this. This is something I encourage people to do. I've got a catchphrase for this, and it's hijack your placebo.
Okay.
Like literally, there's this thing that we know in our brains that is very controlling over the whole human body that we can pinpoint anything. Why not take initiative? Why not actually use that on your side, right? So the most famous example I like to give for the placebo effect to really showcase its power, they did a study, and they took Japanese school children. They split them into two groups, and on one group they said, "Look, this is poison ivy. We're going to rub it on your arm and see what happens." Right? So they rubbed it on their arm, and of course they all got red.
Then
they took another group, and they said, "This is just some random leaf, banana leaf."
Okay.
They rubbed it on their arms and nothing happened. Okay. Now in the group that they told, "Hey, this is poison ivy. We're going to rub it on you," it actually wasn't poison ivy. It was just a regular plant. But their belief alone was enough to actually cause their body to have a panic response and to actually respond with irritation as if it really were poison ivy. But it was just a normal plant. Okay, this is how powerful the placebo is.
Yes.
And in the other group, when they said, "Oh, this is just nothing, don't worry about it," it was actually poison ivy, and it did nothing to them because they were convinced it was just a regular plant. So understanding that there must be something in our brains, a faculty that enables us to actually completely take a full assumption of what's happening in our body. So I actually say, why not hijack this? Why not genuinely make this a thing where you can pick and choose what works in your reality? Okay, so I actually like to take an extreme example with this, and I like to use I like to use tobacco, right? So if I say cigarillos, I say smoking cigarillos, it protects me from cancer, right? Now, to most people who think that, they go, well, you smoke cigars, you're going to get cancer.
Yep.
Well, let's just understand what happened with the school children for a minute. They literally caused their body to break out into poison ivy when there was no danger present whatsoever. And with the other group, while in the absolute face of it, were able to completely have their body have zero effect with it, right? So there's a great deal of our perception there. And if we can use that in other circumstances, why not? Let's just be silly with it.
Yes.
Let's apply it to everything, So one of the funny things that me and some of my friends like to say is, eating McDonald's makes me rich, right? Just completely bizarre. It makes no sense. It has no logical reasoning whatsoever, right? But just taking charge of this placebo, understanding how powerful it can be, it would genuinely actually yield results. So why not abuse it? If it's there, like how many people are actually taking initiative with this and proactively using it to better themselves?
Sure.
Not many, right? So why not just, be random with it, be bizarre, be absurd, and just cultivate all these benefits out of thin air? Because your body knows how to do it. Why not use it?
That's actually also a great example, I would say, of how psyops work. Because essentially, like I alluded to earlier, the real genius of the psyop is where you actually manage two sets of perceptions that will come as a result of the psyop. You have the initial one, which is just the person who takes it on face value, but then you have the person who thinks they see beyond it, but actually you design it so they also take like a different perspective, but another one you want or can control or is aligned with your interests. So the reason the cigarettes one is a great one is, one, the initial premise, which is they cause cancer. Like if no one's ever looked into it, essentially, there's a reason why the people who are like indigenous people who just use pure raw tobacco don't get the same health conditions that people in the West do. That's actually other things that are put into it to make it addictive. There's a million factors, preservatives, all that crap. By the way, a spoiler, there's a little breadcrumb about all areas of how we get food and things like that, if you look into that particular one. But then the other angle is, like you say, when you do stuff like the classic one, I'm sure they did this where you're from because the Anglosphere just did this in general. Like in the UK, we have it where they put those pictures on the fucking thing of like, here's your lung or whatever, or wow, it causes,
mate.
What people don't get is they think that's actually compassionate because they think, right, what you're doing there is you're reminding the person this can happen. But I actually think in line with what we're saying, that's part of the psyop. That's like, you know what, if you're the guy who smokes and you smoke despite the fact we've told you this, let's just sort of in your mind incept the idea you're going to get these illnesses. You're going to become like this. Like there's actually a darkness behind that for me, mate. Like the vibe would be, it's how essentially I'll tie it very briefly to something else. In the last few years, there was a big furore about certain health things, mate. Like the joke is they clearly don't care about you actually being healthy. Like that's just a way of tricking you into doing again what they want. Like if you want, like someone gave this example, if you were truly at war and you were under siege by a massive, like, monolithic enemy, your side would be 24/7 pumping optimism. Think of, like, the concept of the Battle of Britain during the war. It's like the idea of, like, let's all rally together. We're going to beat them. We're going to hang in there. If everyone's giving you from the regime the opposite message of, like, you're all broken and diseased and disgraceful, get away, and dude, they're trying to destroy your self-esteem in that scenario. So, like, I feel like people miss even that. Like, it's actually not a good thing that some of those things tell you how terrible they are and how you're going to ruin your life, but then let you consume the thing.
That's yes. Just like the placebo works.
Yeah.
There's something called the nocebo. It's the antithesis. It's believing that it's going to harm you, right? And this is just prevalent everywhere, but specifically taking the example of tobacco.
It's just a classic, right? Because everyone thinks it's just a A follows B, B follows A scenario. Like if you take it, then this happens, right? It's just, that's reality for most people, yeah?
They plaster it all over the packaging. Like what other logical conclusion can an intelligent human being derive other than if I smoke that thing, it's gonna make me end up like that, right? You're getting bombarded with the suggestion. You're pulling it out. It says smoking kills on the packet, right? Like all these things. How are you not supposed to think that? But when you actually look into it, right, you understand it's a bit of a psyop. There's something. How come people who have never smoked a single cigarette in their life? How many of those people get actually cancer? Wow, that's kind of interesting. That's kind of weird. Why, with a certain illness that was plaguing the world in 2020 and 2021, how come there was a weird absence of people that were smokers? How come they were all non-smokers?
Yeah, true.
It's kind of weird.
Yeah.
Right. So all these things, it's I have compassion for these reply guys, Thorin, because what other conclusion can they really form other than what they've been fed their entire life.
Oh, no, for sure. I mean, essentially, they think they're watching a movie, and in the movie, it's like, well, this guy's obviously the bad guy, isn't he? They've set him up like that. It's like, well, yeah, but you have to understand someone made the movie. You know what I mean? Like, someone wanted you to come to that conclusion. You didn't really think it. In fact, that goes back to what we were saying about intuition, isn't it? What you have to learn is when you learn to listen to your intuition, when I say there's other voices, some of them aren't from you, mate. Some of them are like the reply guys of the world. Some of them are the corporate structure, the power, the regime, all these figures. They make another voice in your head that tells you what you think. Like you think in this scenario, like you're talking about, you think that you've done a logical conclusion when you see the packet and go, well, if I'm smart, so of course I know that X is caused by Y. You know, you think you figured that out, but you didn't. You know, it was programmed into you, and they push the button, don't they?
They gave it to you, you know, and you took it hook, line, and sinker.
Yes.
You know, something I actually like to do to specifically combat that is to have a cigarette case, and this is something I've recommended to people, so you don't have to constantly bombard yourself with those images. You know, it's front loading your subconscious. Like it's such a strong suggestion. So I hate looking at it. Even, you know, if I don't have my case with me, I'll get a marker and I'll just mark all over it so I can't actually see the image of the grotesque thing that they're pushing. And I'll literally just put my cigarillos, my pure organic tobacco, in a cigarette case, just so it's something beautiful instead. I don't have to poison my mind with those images.
Sure. By the way, another thing I also definitely fuck with in terms of the psychology of programming yourself is I also think, again, I have this whole philosophy that the reason I talk about inputs and outputs is because I'm trying to be responsible and understand that the outputs of my life come from the inputs. Other people like to pretend like that's not the case, you know, and it just happened and things had to be this way. I think you just disempower yourself when you do that. Like, I'll give you a great example I saw online that blew my mind. It was like I get a crazy epiphany from it. Someone was explaining, because you know a classic cope that people have as to why they don't want children goes like this. Like, but what if, you know, they were like disabled, for example? What if they had like special needs? What if like it would ruin their life and it'd ruin my life? So I once saw someone who had a child like that, where they were like extremely disabled. Like they were one of the ones where they can't eat for themselves, they can't talk. Like, I don't think they were blind, deaf and dumb and all that, but like they were one of those ones where they're essentially going to have like a bedridden life. You're going to have to care for them 24/7, and they themselves aren't going to be like they're not going to have an awesome life, basically. And the person who had them had a whole philosophy, which again is just going to sound woo-woo, but I would just say think of it as a way of framing and programming yourself. They had sort of a philosophy almost of like a reincarnation type tip. And so their angle was, because they thought there was a meaning to everything, or rather they decided there was a meaning to everything, and they were going to find a way to figure out what meaning made sense to them. Their take on it was this. They said to them, a really disabled person like that is like a soul that needed to come back and be really cared for and just given only love and like everything taken care of for them, and like just and they said when they viewed it that way, it made it easy to care for them. It felt like it was like a blessing that they were the ones granted the like, essentially it was almost like the universe said, you're the only ones who can handle this. Like you take this special, delicate, fragile little baby bird and you care for it in that way. And if you view it that way, it'd seem incredible. Like all of a sudden then you tap into your love. I'm sure you'd have an incredible experience. Even though initially it sounds like a nightmare, doesn't it? You have a kid that's got all these disabilities, they're not going to play and run and stuff. That blew my mind, dude, because I think there's something to that. That's how you want to program yourself, right?
Yeah, literally. And that's the thing with anything, not that having a kid with a disability or something like that is some awful tragic thing, but point is, it doesn't matter what it is. Absolutely any and every circumstance that can ever find yourself in, you can find that it's actually an amazing experience, an opportunity to teach you something that you would otherwise never had the opportunity to learn.
Yes.
That is beautiful. I've never heard that before.
It's awesome, isn't it? Because what it does is, you notice how, this is the power of language, guys. Notice how I took a scenario that you immediately saw in your mind and you had all these judgments attached to it you didn't consider. But when the guy essentially explained it to me in his language, suddenly, because he's taken control of all the labels of what it means to be disabled, to have to be cared for, because he's like changing, almost inverting the dynamic of that, at the end, your conclusion is totally different. It's like, holy shit, I never saw it from that angle. Like, yeah, there would be like a beauty and a grace to that. And it would actually notice. It would also demand of you a lot. It would demand that you become an incredibly compassionate person, that you can see past the flaws that this individual has and the fact that they can't do things that are normal. But, you know, it would essentially encourage you to become a better person, I think.
Yeah, that blew my mind. That's amazing.
Wait, one last topic. Let's do one last thing and then we'll wrap it up. So one thing I wanted to ask you was this. when you communicate with people, do you actually find, how often do you think people seem like they understand what you mean? Like, do you think people, can you ever essentially directly communicate with people? Do you think they always take some like version of what they think? Do you ever feel like you're getting through, like you're sort of piercing the veil?
Do I feel like I'm getting through?
Yeah.
No, I would say I do. I would say I do. And that's simply based upon the feedback that I've received. It's people letting me know, hey, I actually took this thing and I used it in the specific way that I wanted them to. And yeah, it's amazing. It's done this and that. So by just sheer evidence, I would say that I do. But, it's not an easy task. It's done by an absolute investment in the way that I communicate. Like, I'm a highly trained hypnotist, right? So I'm very conscious of every single word that I'm saying, the part of the brain that I'm talking to. So it's a great effort. It's not just some simple thing. And, I am glad to see that confirmed. And through the feedback, I do feel I do penetrate people. That sounds such a funny way to put it. But what I do say lands, yes.
I actually recently did an interview with that Joshua Lissek guy, the ghostwriter on, people might know from like Money Twitter and stuff, who was also into like hypnotism and stuff. And he was talking in that about some very interesting stuff that I'll just say again as a breadcrumb. I thought I could maybe throw it to you and you can close on this. One of the interesting things he pointed out is that, again, hypnosis is another perfect one, like astrology. People have only ever seen the guy in the pub or the silly guy on TV who makes you act like a chicken, and it all just looks like some comedic pantomime shit, and they think, right, that's obviously nonsense, or it's for weak-minded people, or, I don't know if I was being hypnotized, all that shit, right? Whereas what you actually realise, if you ever look into that topic, is one, it underlies so much of actual modern psychology and things like that. And then secondly, again, there are very rich, powerful, and influential people who are not just using these techniques. This is their main weapon. Like, this is what they're using to shape the world and their own minds into what they want. So it's not that everyone has to get into it, but there's definitely, there's a depth there that goes way beyond what the surface level of that topic seems like, right? Has that been your experience?
Absolutely. Oh, there is a huge psyop on what that actually is. Yeah, people hear the word hypnosis, they think of the guy swinging the pendulum, saying, now you're getting sleepy, and for good reason. I'm actually not too displeased with that being the thing that most people can immediately think of when they hear of hypnosis, because then it just makes all the more covertness that much more effective. Because not many people, unless they're specifically trained in this kind of stuff, could even really identify that I have knowledge in this and that I use it to be extra persuasive and to change people's beliefs and to make them think more of themselves and to get past a bunch of self-limiting ideas and all these things. You need a very keen eye to understand. So, it's always more effective stealthily. So,
that's like sort of part of the technique. I see. It's better if they don't know, right?
Yep. I'm just having a conversation with someone. That's all.
I mean, the thing is, though, that's also the part of why there's so much depth to the topic, right? What you'll learn if you ever look into these topics is, in a way, even when we don't know this, that's what we're all doing when we communicate. We're on some level, we are shaping the other person's reality or bringing them into a certain mental state with what we describe or the way we use words, right?
Absolutely. Yes. 100%. When you can look, I've always been fascinated with words because, what are words? If you dig deep, here's a breadcrumb. Look into Terence McKenna talking about language. Yes. That is just such a beautiful, beautiful thing. Basically, language controls our entire perception of everything. And if you think about this, you get good at talking about things. You get good at using language in a very specific way. You have unlocked the ability to dictate people's entire perceptions on anything.
Yes.
So it's worth everybody's while to master something that they do literally all day, every day. Let's use words.
Yeah, I would actually, if people just want a random thing to end on, I would even say, if you want a really great example of this, there's a really good comic book that was written that was just a one-off trade paperback in the series, if people know comics. In DC Comics, they do a line called Elseworlds, where the premise is, whereas I know it sounds mad, but whereas in theory, comics are supposed to have a continuity where Superman always is from Krypton and does all these things, the idea is even if you read it by a different author, it'll always have those same hallmarks. That's kind of like the starting place of the story of Superman or Batman or whoever. The premise of the Elseworlds one is it's intentionally, these are like one-off, like alternate reality versions. So you can do one, like the one I'm about to describe now called Red Son was one where the premise was instead of Superman's ship landing in Kansas in America, it gets sort of diverted by a meteor. It lands in like Soviet Russia and he becomes like a Soviet icon instead of being, you know, like the man who stands for truth, justice, and the American way and all the jazz behind the Superman story. And basically within this story, the clever dynamic they do is they make it so that Lex Luthor is part of the American empire. So he's actually battling Superman, but for good reasons, right? Not the traditional thing of, you know, he just sort of hates him because he's an alien. And they have this really genius part, which I'm not even going to ruin the story by telling you, because I won't tell you what he says. But they have a part where basically Superman has the Brainiac robot, and this robot warns him, like, you got to watch out for Lex Luthor, though, because he's like, this is like random terminology. They just say, you know, he's like a 15th level intellect. And the idea is, you know, he's just so smart that, like, he's really dangerous. And obviously Superman's thinking, well, why would that be dangerous? I'm Superman, you know, like, you can't shoot me with bullets, you can't do it. And here's what the Lex Luthor guy does to him, mate. The Lex Luthor guy just essentially gives him a note that when he reads it, I won't say what it says, but it says like the perfect sentence to just like sort of unravel all of Superman's identity and make him question everything about who he is and why he does it. And it's just because of the way he phrased this sentence, like the way like to even read it was to examine it, was to think it was true. And then it's almost like it just corrodes him from the inside out. I would just say, for good or for ill, that's what you can do if you sort of master language, right?
100%. Yes.
Here at Thorin's side, I have people on my side, both literally and metaphorically, because this video and all of the content on my channel is kindly supported by my Patreon community. Would you like to get teasers for my upcoming content and see who the next guests are for my interview series? Do you want to ask me a question in my monthly video AMA? Maybe you want to select between the topics I'm going to do for my next solo video. Or perhaps you are excited by the idea of a private, exclusive, never to be published personal discussion with yours truly. Well, if so, heed this call to action and join Thorin's side today via the Patreon link in the description box below.